constantly shifting through the time-space continuum, Metron's three disciples observe the universe from the Mobius Couch.
Don't want no short dick man. 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 Don't want no eeny weeny, teeny weeny, shriveled little short dick Mobius Couch. People of the world, welcome to the Mobius Couch, a time-space interdimensional vehicle from which your three huge dicked hosts oversee and keep honest the lame stream media and its leftward tilt. Today, we're going to talk about Sleepy Joe Biden absconding away with classified documents to multiple locations while the FBI raids Donald Trump's private home. Does that sound fair to you? But first, a word from our sponsors at Swole Milk. Are you tired of pounding down bland protein powders that don't deliver on promised gains, even though you're crushing your sweet gym workouts? Try switching to Swole Milk. Swole Milk is based upon a scientifically based formula originally developed by the U.S. military's now defunct Centaur mutant program. With its proprietary blend of bull, horse, and sperm whale DNA mixed with sustainably sourced all vegan protein sources, Swole Milk is what you need to take your workout to the next level and get the gains owed to you, a straight white man. With special code Mobius Couch, you can save $69.69 on a 420 pound of Swole Milk at brojogan.com. Back to the podcast. As usual, I'm joined on the couch with my fellow hosts, Patrick.
Hey, Alessandro. I'm like literally gagging right now. I did not know Swole Milk was sponsoring our podcast. I can't believe you kept
Holy
it from
shit.
us. I use it every day.
It's a big deal. It's our first.
Patty, I can tell you use it. You're swole.
Yeah. And also joining Patrick and myself on the couch is, of course, Joe. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Al.
So a little bit of a bait and switch for new listeners. We're actually a podcast about comic books.
Not
About right-wing conspiracies. Apologize for that. But we are here today to talk about Mark Millar and Bryan Hitch's The Ultimates 2.
The Ultimates 2,
sequel
Part
to-
1.
Yeah. The first half of The Ultimates 2. The sequel to The Ultimates, which was the Ultimate Universe version of the Avengers. If you have questions about that, you can listen to an earlier podcast, which is posted, where we did talk about Ultimates 1. Long story short, Marvel rebooting their universe with like a side universe that was grittier and more real. And the Ultimates were the Avengers version of that. Interestingly, the Avengers films borrow heavily from the Ultimates version of the Avengers.
I think
more
all
so
of the
than
MCU, really.
Yeah. I mean, it was,
not just
we're
the
going to get
Avengers.
into that when we talk about this comic, because there's a lot of little parts kind of picked out and put into the films. But so, yeah, this is like Captain America, Iron Man, all of them, but just a non-main continuity version. Came out in the early 2000s. But that's what we're here to talk about.
Mark Millar is pretty well known. I think if you're listening to a comic book podcast, you've probably either seen something of his that was adapted or read something of his. He did that Wanted comic book that was made with that movie with Professor X and Angelina Jolie, where they can bend bullets
Professor
and
X.
stuff like that.
That's his name.
James McAvoy.
James
Um,
Well, he did Kick-Ass, right? Didn't he do the Kick-Ass?
Yes.
No? I think it was him.
He did Jupiter, that show that got canceled on Netflix.
Yeah, Jupiter,
Yeah,
not Jupiter Rising. Jupiter's Children.
Also, he did do Kick-Ass.
He did do
He did do Kick-Ass. All right,
Yeah.
he did do Kick-Ass, yeah.
What was it called? Jupiter's Legacy?
Jupiter's Legacy. Okay.
That's it.
God, we got there.
Bryan Hitch is the artist on this book, and he's known for his super realistic artwork, and he's fucking fantastic.
Even though he still is doing things and still drawing just as good, if not, better over time than he did when he did the Ultimates, I feel like this is still some of his best work. Like, the amount of time, I mean, he jokes about like having nervous breakdowns and leaving the book like multiple times and like having to be talked back onto the book to finish it, kind of like that's how hard it was for him to draw the insane amount of detail and stuff like in this book.
The one thing I was going to bring up, I don't remember if we talked about it for Ultimates 1, but the amount of detail, like even depth of vision and scenery that he puts in is next level.
Or just like it's next level for sure. Like the backgrounds, it's just like when it's, even if it's just like, there's a building in the background of like a half-page panel or something, and it's just like, that's been destroyed or something. There's like, the amount of detail in the debris of like a broken building or something in the background of like a random shot where like you can't even see the characters because they're far away or something, and you're just like, Jesus fucking Christ, that must have taken 2 weeks to draw. But yeah, he's incredible in this book, and he crushes it out. And yeah, like as we said, a lot of the MCU is based on this version of the Avengers. Like, I jokingly call him Samuel L. Fury, because it's obviously Samuel L. Jackson. But like, it's everything from the way he draws so realistically and the way they cast these characters in the movies and stuff is basically taken from this.
The very first issue of Ultimates 2 is Captain America jumping out of a helicopter without a parachute, and that's exactly
straight out of Winter Soldier.
Yeah, that's how Winter Soldier opens. So,
and obviously Winter Soldier, he was doing something else, and it was a different mission when he hit the water. But like at the same time, like him jumping out of a helicopter or a plane or something with no parachute and hitting the water, straight out of this book. So we're doing issues 1 through 7. So there's 13 issues. So we were only doing the first half. But that being said, what is your overall take away from the first chunk of this story? I guess you can weigh in on the whole thing as a whole if you want to, but like, how do you guys feel about Ultimates 2 still?
I've always been of the opinion that Ultimates 2 is much more superior to Ultimates 1, even back in 2004 when this stuff was first coming out. It's fantastic. Joe mentioned earlier how Bryan Hitch had like nervous breakdowns on this book, but between issue 7 and issue 13, like a year and a half passes.
It's a little longer, I think, really.
So there is a huge cliffhanger at issue 7. And
even before 7, I think it was like every other month, right? It wasn't like monthly.
I think it was like kind of consistent, but yeah, once it hit 7, it was like 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah, it would take like half a year between an issue. Yeah,
and issue 13 is enormous, and there's a million people in it, and there's a ton of stuff going on. So like, I get it, but man, waiting for that last issue to come out was like, I think it was a solid 3 or 4 months.
I think it was like 6 months.
It might have been, I was going to say it might be more.
So Ultimates 1 is, it was establishing the Avengers in the Ultimate Universe. I still enjoyed Ultimates 1, even 20 years later, but our criticisms of it being like this punchy, like the idea of what a 16-year-old boy would see as like realistic and gritty. Mm-hmm. Those criticisms are valid for Ultimates 1. What Millar did was he kind of backed a little bit away from bringing in random celebrities, and he focused. So Ultimates ran from 2002 to 2004. Ultimates 2 started in 2004, ended in 2007. What Millar was doing was he was really, for Ultimates 2, like focusing on what was happening politically with America and our invasion of Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction that weren't there. Like all that was going on when these issues were coming out. And Millar did a very good job of pulling from current events into these storylines. And it's basically like, well, what if George Bush had a superhero team at his disposal? What would that look like? Would they be going into other countries? Would they be disarming these countries with nuclear weapons? So at the time when you're reading it, it's all very salient and it's all in the zeitgeist of our culture. And, there was tons of people protesting against the war, kind of similar to how Thor is protesting against the Ultimates. I thought Millar's writing got better. His representation of female characters still not great.
A lot better. Not a lot better.
Not great.
We'll get to the. It's not time. I don't hear the jingle yet, but we'll get to
it's not the jingle.
Not great.
Yet.
So, but Millar improved. Bryan Hitch, the fight with Thor is one of the best fights in any comic book I've ever read, and that's like 99%. Because of Bryan Hitch's artwork. My last note about why I loved it is Pietro, Quicksilver, and Wanda, Scarlet Witch in the Ultimate Universe. Specifically the Ultimates, because they're an Ultimate X-Men and they're kind of different characters in that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I can't explain. They're just the most charmingly gross relationship, and I love that. I love everything about this.
It's so fun.
I'm going to quote, my first note on issue 2 is, Wanda and Pietro's relationship is deeply disturbing, but I also love them unconditionally. I don't know how it's so wrong, but they're all so incredible.
Well, I don't know about you, but I completely agree with Patty. And Ultimates 2 is 100% better than Ultimates 1, and I still love Ultimates 1. However badly it's sort of aged. Man, I mean, the art's next level. Like, if you hold up a comic book of Bryan Hitch's artwork from this and any other comic book at the time, you'd be like, holy shit, that's the same medium? Like, it was like a different world, like the depth and detail he put into his panels. It's crazy. And the writing is also, I mean, he crushes it out. And I really like how they focused on the team, but at the same time, Millar focused on still the ramifications of like what had come before, like with Ultimates 1, with like Hulk being like, that's tying back to the first storyline, like when the Hulk was like, I'm gonna go eat 800 people, kind of thing, or kill 800 people rather. You're seeing the fallout of that, and like the way the team gets taken apart step by step throughout this volume 2, and then comes back together at the end is awesome as shit. So yeah, Ultimates 2 is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to keep mine short because I have the same view, basically. Although I think I was more down on Ultimates 1 as a reread than you were. Like, I actively kind of didn't
for sure,
enjoy Ultimates 1. 2, I still loved. I think it's still great. To Patrick's points, like, the parallels with the War on Terror are awesome. Also, we'll get into it more when we talk about the issues, but the way he kind of equates superheroes working with the government as weapons of mass destruction that governments have in their arsenal, I thought was really fascinating. Like, to kind of take that idea to the next level of like, oh, it's cute to have superheroes, but like, well, wouldn't they really just kind of also be basically a nuclear arsenal? But just people with those powers.
And it's clearly what Nick Fury is doing throughout the story.
And again, like how Thor fits in and the protest against it is great. I also, I mean, apart from the thematic content, just on a narrative plot structure, I think it's so good at building the tension and the mystery. And because Ultimates 1, it still wasn't like action packed. It had peaks of action, but it felt very like routine, like introduce this, introduce that. Action. Ultimates 2 felt much more like an actual building of tension and conflict.
Right, yes. And
like
there's not a lot of huge action sets in this.
No, but it really builds well to the ones they have. Like, I thought it was a much more
it's much more character focused in who the team is.
Comic.
And you get Captain America running around and beating the shit out of people at the same time, but like for the most part it's just like what's going on with this team and who are these people? And
I just think narratively 2 was much more mature. It was a much more mature narratively comic because like he wasn't tied to like I have to introduce this person and that person.
Also,
like this was more just like I have the character.
And granted, this is a part 2 of this discussion kind of thought, but like it culminates in such a good way at the end. Like so it's not just like let's just focus on the characters for 12 issues and not have it go anywhere. Like there's a very cohesive like thought pattern and plot line as to why we're seeing what we're seeing per issue, like as it goes on. And it's fantastic. I love it.
And a quick note about Hitch's art and the kind of cinematic detail he uses. Like this is kind of a silly example, but this panel of
I'm
like
looking at it right now.
generals at a table, if this were any other comic, it would be like a head-on lengthwise angle of people evenly sitting around a bare table discussing something.
Yeah,
but in
and
Hitch's
he puts the camera in a certain place, and it makes
camera's in there.
Boring
the
scene of a bunch of people sitting at a table. Interesting.
And the desk is littered with like drinks and files, and you can see the world map in the background. Like this is a level of
and writing wise and art wise, it's juxtaposed by Captain America hitting the water and swimming, and like it's like Nick Fury is debriefing them, but he's simultaneously watching Cap do this, and it's just awesome.
Yeah,
and they're like, well, what about this? What about that? And he's like, meanwhile, he's like, oh, well, I don't think that'll be a problem. And then it shows Captain America like rip through like 30 dudes, and you're like, oh shit, he's right.
Yeah, but it's really a level of detail and kind of like a cinematic quality. It's kind of like watching a Tom Clancy show or something. It's like it's very well done and something that at the time was pretty rare.
Yeah. So you're right. It is like watching the Tom Clancy show. It's very similar to that. It's subtle, but there's another Captain America 2 Winter Soldier scene steal here, and it's not quite the same thing, but it's basically the elevator scene where he's like, he knows he's surrounded by Hydra agents in Captain America, you know, but it's that same thing of like, why don't you get, if you guys want to like survive, like why don't you put your weapons down? And they all do it. He's like, clever boys, you know, kind of thing. And it's just like that thing of like Captain America just standing there all confident around, like surrounded by bad guys kind of thing. And you're just like, that's fucking...
Well, yeah, even just the
if they're influencing in 2004, influencing a movie that came out like 15 years later, you're like, good job, you know, you crushed it.
And even going back to the art, like even on the close-ups of Cap's face, like the military look to the strap on his helmet, and this was all like next level.
Oh, that's another thing I forgot about. Just that subtle change in his costume, I was like, bravo! I like screamed. I saw that. Finally, Captain America's not wearing tights on his head and has a helmet on, and obviously stolen for the MCU. But like, man, that like they Bryan Hitch made that shit up. Like that was never done before. Like this is straight Bryan Hitch.
Ultimate version of Captain America he's truly a terrifying man.
Yeah.
I mean,
and he made Captain America cool again. Yeah, like how impossible that was.
I disagree.
Back then?
Well, I disagree on that, but well, let's get into like the initial.
You love to be like. I mean, they purposely make him like ridiculous, but at the same time.
But so to Patrick's point, I think he's more terrifying than cool.
Yeah, because he
more
seems
like actually not cool, but just sort of like a scary figure. I mean, reading it now as an adult, definitely. I read this as like,
well, let's talk about him.
Something's fucked up with this guy. Like he's not a heroic figure. Yes. He's a deeply fucked up individual.
But when the first issue is Cap rescuing hostages. But again, to Hitch's art, when you see Cap punching these guys in the face, like he is obliterating their faces.
Yeah,
and their bones are breaking.
They're not alive anymore.
Or just
he's
very
breaking,
possibly.
He's like twisting necks. He does the Steven Seagal neck twist thing to kill.
He is a monster. I would put my gun down too. He just like brutalized everyone in his path.
Like 40 people to get to that door. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't.
And he didn't open the door. He smashed through it like it was paper.
Smashed through it.
You know? You're just like, okay.
This is kind of a comedic thing, but I do love how Captain America still uses like 1940s slang, because when they're trying to close the door on him, he says, "Don't even think about it, Buster." Like while he's killing people, he calls them Buster.
I also like how he walks in and just says, he talks to the Americans, like to the hostages. He's just like, he's like, you folks in decent shape, and there's still a room full of guys with guns, and he just like doesn't. It's not that he's dismissing them, but he just doesn't see them as a threat.
Right.
He's just like, yeah, you're safe now. I'm in the room. Like, it's over. And he's not done, technically, like, getting them free. And they're like, yeah, we're okay. You know, kind of thing. It's pretty much, you know, one guy says or whatever. And he's like, good, because everything's going to be fine now. And it's just like, you're just like, Jesus Christ. You haven't even beaten these guys up yet.
This isn't in this comic, but there was I think it was like some Ultimate crossover where he fights a Russian version of him that was like created. I don't know if it was like, you know, Red whatever.
Ultimatum or something.
Yeah, Ultimatum. But when the two of them fight, I remember the Russian version had this whole speech of like, you know, I've been trained to make my foes suffer, and like I've thought about this fight for, you know, 50 years, and like I'll make you, you know. And they fight, and Cap just like brutalizes this man, and he just goes like, well, I was just trained to kill or something. He says like, I was just trained to win or something. And it's just like, it's horrifying. He is a scary figure in the Ultimates version.
Millar did a great job in Ultimates 2 as painting the Avengers as like in this gray area of, and we talked about it in the Ultimates 1 episode. The difference between the main version of Avengers and Ultimates is that Ultimates, the Avengers work for the government and they do what the government tells them to do. Where in a, you know, main universe, they're superheroes and they do what their heart and soul tells them to do. And it's just like, you can understand, you know, by the end of this arc, why these, you know, quote unquote supervillains rose up to fight these motherfuckers, because they were just like,
yeah, they're fighting they're
countries.
They're fighting America though.
Yeah,
like it's not just that they're fighting the Ultimates. They're not like forming a supervillain team to go fight the other superheroes. Like they're forming a coalition of superpowered villains, so to speak, representatives of their countries, I would say. And then coming to fight America because we're crossing lines that they're not comfortable with, like as a country, I mean, you know. And I'm just like, that's so weirdly real.
Well, that's what I loved about. I mean, this is spoiler territory, but I mean, I know that even though it's all been like manipulated by a bad guy, you still are kind of see
Some of
the
it.
bad team's viewpoint of like, well, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, it
yeah.
kind of makes sense to do what you're doing because
Yeah, I don't want to get too much into the second.
no,
part,
let's keep going with like issue
Well, I
one.
just had one
more
before.
cap
Looks like-
note. Oh,
Okay,
go
I
ahead,
have
go
one
ahead.
more cap note.
You go first, Patrick. Then I'll do my final cap.
Okay,
fight
so
note.
Captain America loses his shit on Hank Pym for beating up the Wasp. But through this arc, you kind of see that toxic masculinity of the 1940s where Captain America is pretty controlling and possessive over Janet.
Yeah.
And it's like a different
I was
type
gonna make
of
that.
abuse.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it.
100%.
Like, yeah, it was like
They
and it was
let's put
something
it
that
this
went
way:
over
even
my
though he's
head.
the better guy, he's not
Right.
quote unquote. He's not a better relationship for her, and she's in just as bad a relationship with Cap as she was with her abusive ex-husband.
No, so Patrick, I was going to bring up that exact point when we got to their relationship, but so there were parts in this where I legit was, and I don't remember when I was younger reading this, but reading this now, I was afraid for Janet. Like when she's alone with Cap, I was like, don't make him mad.
Yes.
Don't be mad at it. Don't make him like hurt you. It was
guys,
really
it's Captain
I
America.
was
You'd never
afraid
hurt
for
her.
her.
That shit.
I don't know. I don't know, man. He is scary.
No.
He is
That
scary.
shit went over my head when I read this back in 2004 because I read the annual, and in the annual there's a scene where Tony Stark is having his bachelor party in a strip club, and I guess Fury and all the Avengers are there, so the Wasp is there. Captain America refuses to come into the strip club. And so Tony's like, well, why the fuck is he here? And he's like, oh, well, he's waiting for Janet to leave. Like, it just
That's
like
scary.
he's
Yeah,
standing
that's not
outside
a
waiting.
healthy-
Like, yeah, no, just go home,
That's
dude.
not a
Why?
healthy relationship.
She's the Wasp. She took down the Hulk, like, more or less by herself. Like, she can handle herself. Like, what? So, yeah, that was just one macro point. This Captain America, Ultimate's Captain America, is legitimately terrifying.
He is all right. So here's the one separation point I would say is that they finally made him do things with his powers and like act how I feel like a soldier from his time period would act. And it's not that it's the right way to be. It's just that I'm like, that's how Captain America would actually be. Like that's how that's why I find this so refreshing.
Yes.
It's not that I find it like I'm like he's the hero of heroes, like here, kind of thing. But I just go like. Finally, like he's running into a fight with soldiers and just beating the shit out of them because that's what he would do, kind of thing. Like, whereas
also,
Captain America in the regular universe had just become so milquetoast and boring and like just like never did anything. Like,
I didn't mean to say this in a way that to imply that Captain America is a bad character.
No, he's fantastic
in the story,
yeah,
but I just mean that he is displayed as like very, to quote Taylor Swift, anti-hero.
Hero, yeah.
Tony's another interesting one because he's in Ultimates too. Like he's legit just like a drunk rich dude who's flying an iron suit for a minute.
Yeah,
there doesn't seem to be any.
Time. The whole time. He's not Robert Downey Jr. He's not like charismatic. I mean, he is charismatic, but he's not like. I'm just saying, he's not like. Ultimately, I'm a good guy inside, and I'll have the glove at the end of the day, and I'll snap. He's just a piece of shit rich guy with a suit.
He's like Elon Musk just
amazing.
on a lark with his iron suit. That's all.
Yeah.
It's crazy. He's not at all. Well, actually,
by the way,
Elon is probably
Musk,
bad. But
yeah, I feel like
Elon
Hitch's
Musk is probably
artwork-
worse than Tony Stark. But he's really.
Could you imagine
He's
if
just a
Elon
drunk
Musk
rich
had an
dude
Iron
who-
Man suit?
God no.
Anyone who criticized him on Twitter would be just fucking dead.
He would just shoot them. Yeah, he would destroy their home.
A laser beam would cut their house in half.
Sorry, before I know we're really getting stalled on this.
Go ahead.
One more Captain America note. A lot of splits. Did you notice
Oh.
that? Like when
I
he
think
fights,
that's just Hitch's style of
but he
making
he
one
constantly
guy
does splits.
fight like 7 people at the same time, and I kind of enjoy it
But every fight Cap is in, you will
because
find him in
every
a full
limb of his
split.
body is hitting somebody at the same time.
Full
Yeah,
split.
and that is why he's so terrifying. And like, it's like one of the first panels. He does a split while he's leapfrogging, breaking some guy's neck while he's leapfrogging over them, and he's doing a
Yeah,
split.
it's this one.
It's fantastic. It's
And
fantastic.
like
one, yeah.
his legs are like tree trunks, so you know that and he's got boots on. Like he just broke both those men's jaws and faces completely.
Well, no, the one guy on the left, like his head is twisted around backwards. Like his arms is in a completely different spot than his head. So he's kicked his head completely backwards.
So while he is doing a split, and that's kind of ridiculous, at the same time, it's frightening. It's very frightening. This Captain,
Yeah, I love it.
I don't know how to explain this because I've reread this storyline so many times, but this is the first time I've read it probably in a few years and really like analyzed it. And I was like, damn, Ultimate Captain America is a terrifying,
just brutal,
just terrifying. But when we get to Jan, I want to get back to the relationship part more because again, you stole my thunder on that, Patrick. I was going to bring it up, but I was like, I was afraid for Jan in any scene where she was alone with Captain America.
Yeah,
because he is just terrifying.
Talking about Cap and Jan, they're walking down the street, right? And they're having a conversation, and they get mugged, and they're like, and they both kind of like laugh and smile at each other, and then it implies that they beat the shit out of those.
How much? No,
muggers.
Beat the shit. I think it implies they murdered those people.
I don't think they murdered them.
I think those dudes are dead.
What?
At any rate,
those guys are
no.
dead.
I just wanted to make a quick note. So this is from the extras at the back of my Ultimates 2 volume or whatever. But like Bryan Hitch basically, and I guess Mark Millar didn't even know this until they had written this. Had this interview or whatever, but he took 1940. He wanted so much that Cap's old neighborhood, would look like he once lived there, sort of thing. So these streets don't exist anymore, and they're like 1940s New York streets. And he went out of his way to draw streets from the 1940s and make them look old and like aged them up to where they would look like they were in the present, so they could walk down the fucking street. This is just background shit. This is how crazy Bryan Hitch is. And I'm like, holy fuck, that's insane.
Mark Millar.
No. Mark Millar didn't know that Bryan Hitch did
Bryan
this.
Hitch's idea
so he just did this. And he just drew,
wow.
he just wanted the neighborhood to look a certain way. So he went and found like streets from the 1940s and like redrew them and aged them up to where they would look like in present day. And then was like, oh, this would make more sense to be his old neighborhood, like where he would live, because it's actually from the 40s. And I was like, that's fucking insane. And it's like, when you look at the panels, you don't really see a lot of the streets. They're just kind of in the background. And you're just like, Jesus Christ, you put that much thought into like the background buildings of them walking down the street.
I was going to mention, because I think they comment on where they are. I think this happened in the Village or something, which is like, if you go to Greenwich Village now in New York, it does not look like that. It's
No. That's the point. These aren't real New York streets, but they were at one time. But like, they don't exist anymore. Yeah. And that was like one of the things he did. And I was just like, that's fucking insane. Okay.
Well, that's what he had to break down every 3 months.
But it relates to this scene because I thought it was funny. Captain America is wearing a light blue shirt with a dark blue blazer, and Jan is wearing a light green shirt with a dark green blazer. So they're basically matching outfits. And going back to like Captain America's controlling nature, I'm like, I bet he picked that outfit out for her.
Or she wore it out of fear that he would be upset how she was dressed. She literally mentions that later.
Yeah. We shouldn't be laughing. It's terrifying.
He doesn't. Oh, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't be laughing at that. No, it's funny in the sense of
like that. It's
yeah.
I did not catch that when I read that in 2004.
Before their jaunt too is we get the first like Tony scene, which is him on Larry King with the little banner as Dr. Anthony Stark and just drinking. He's drinking a martini on Larry King, talking about whatever. I mean, that's Tony.
Also,
that's
there's
Tony Stark.
Clearly like a refill on the desk because he has like a travel martini.
Yeah, he has like a thermos of martini or whatever. It's
there's
not a shaker.
There's more. It's
it
not just like
a
one
thermos.
Yeah, it's like a strap. It's clearly he's got like a travel martini with him.
But they're bringing in. So going back to the themes we discussed earlier, like Larry King is kind of talking about the government overreach and what's happening in the Middle East, and they're bringing in that theme already. And then we get the like incel convention with Bruce Banner and Hank Pym meeting up in the cell, which is like these dudes just fucking suck.
They're just like hanging out, just making up new superhero ideas, I guess.
Yeah. I was just gonna say it's funny how Millar just kind of, and I don't know if maybe I'm reading it this way, but I feel like he's really like almost satirizing Ant-Man and Hank Pym's idea is like, well, now instead of being Giant Man, I can just turn small and talk to ants. And it just comes off as so ridiculous in the Ultimates universe. Yes. Whereas in the real universe, he's a real hero. Like that's a real thing. He's a a face value hero of the Avengers. And in this, the idea, it just sounds desperate that like, oh, now I can shrink small.
It is desperate. Yeah.
Now I made myself small. It's just so like sad and desperate and ridiculous that I kind of love how Millar took Hank's character that way.
It's also, I love the idea that they're making it more of an interesting thing that they somehow like are coming up with new ideas. And granted, this is just more stealing of Janet's powers. Instead of just going, and now he's Ant-Man, you know, and having an issue of the Avengers or something like that, he's going like, hey, is this a cool idea? And they're just having this dumb conversation of like, let's make up the next superhero so I can get back on the team.
But that's what I mean. Millar, what I appreciate is Millar makes it like in a normal universe, it would be like, oh, back from the shadows. Hank Pym is back.
Yeah, holy shit, he's got a new power set? That's awesome.
But in this universe, it's like just a sad, like,
it's like, nice try, bro.
The barrel. I don't know what to do, I guess.
What, you talk to ants now? Get out of here.
Yeah.
As we've mentioned, Hitch's artwork is incredibly realistic. So Hank shrinks down, he's riding an ant, and the panel is Hank in the foreground riding an ant, and then Bruce Banner's glasses, and Bruce goes, oh my God, I can't believe I'm even looking at this.
Which is bizarre because he's known Janet for years.
But that's what I'm saying. Is Bruce saying like, Hank, this is the dumbest fucking thing you've brought
I don't
to the
think
table.
he is. I think he's
well,
like,
look at his
he's
face,
jazzed
though.
about it.
But look at Bruce's face.
Yeah, you're right. He's like, oh my
at
God, look at this.
He's like,
it's amazing.
What? Also, Hank Pym is so deluded that he thinks that Nick Fury is going to let him back on the team that his ex-wife is on, that he hospitalized, whose boyfriend is the leader of. Like, what are you thinking, man? Are you insane? Like, what?
I mean, we'll get to that later. There's a scene where Nick Fury literally just says, like, dude, it's a non-starter. You can't be on the team. It's like we can't even.
I don't even know why I'm having this conversation with you.
Yeah,
right
Nick
now,
Fury even says like it doesn't matter the ideas you bring to me. You cannot be on this team.
Yeah, just like on paper, I can't even have the paper trail leading back to me right now. Like everyone, the team is very public. They do talk about that a lot. Like the press follows it very closely. Everyone's very like. Their books are analyzed by account. You know, like everyone's watching what they're doing, and he's like, I can't even have you attached to us with your name at the end of a document, you know, like kind of thing, like let alone like literally be on the team standing out in front of people.
But I just thought that was an interesting. I mean, Hank Pym's obviously a piece of shit. Like he's a wife beater. He's horrible. But he's in this Ultimates too. He's sort of an interesting character and just the sadness of it and like the patheticness of him is really highlighted in this. And I think it's really atypical because again, in a mainstream Avengers, he would just be one of the heroes. He'd be like one of the heroes. Heart of Gold does something with his ants and saves the day. And in this, it's like, he's a loser.
I just want to reiterate, in Ultimates 1, he nearly killed his wife by having ants attack her. And now
while
he's
she was
pitching
small.
The idea to Nick Fury that he should be on the team with his ex-wife that he almost killed with ants as Ant-Man, the guy who controls ants.
Moving on, so then the next scene kind of introduces the antagonistic through line we're going to see, which is Loki
Thor
and Asgard. Crazy. So, Thor meets a friend of his at a bar.
Yeah.
Volstagg. But then things happen and we're led to believe, like, was Volstagg there? By the way, if you didn't catch it, Loki there in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then he's walking past the guy in the red coat there.
Also, I want to mention, like, when I first read this comic, completely missed that. Like, had no idea.
Oh, well, yeah, but you didn't know what Loki looked like yet.
Loki was there. But, reading back on it, you catch up on things like, oh, there he is.
And then 2 seconds later, this was a
Thor sitting by himself, and he's like, and even Thor is like, seriously? Like, he's like, the guy, the waiter is like, sir, you've been sitting by yourself for, like, the last, and Thor is like, what? He's like, have I been?
He's like, you've been sitting by yourself, talking to yourself. You're starting to make the other patrons of the restaurant like nervous. And then all of a sudden, Volstagg is gone, and Thor's like, what?
Yeah.
And again, like Millar walking that tightrope of is Thor crazy or is he actually the god of thunder?
They did such a good job of making Thor seem like he wasn't really Thor. Also, in the best part about being the Ultimates universe, that could have easily been the case. Like, it's not even like he's writing it to where the point where you're like, that's absolutely not true. being the Ultimates universe, they might have been like, hey, you know what? We're going to make Thor like a crazy guy. And he's not going to be, blah, blah, blah. Just like the traitor is later. Like that's a hero.
So Thor has this moment where he's like, oh, am I fucking crazy? And then it flips to
I might be crazy. Yeah.
Captain America leaving this event, and he's confronted by reporters, and they're like, hey, what's the deal with the Hulk being Bruce Banner and also working for S.H.I.E.L.D.? And that's how the issue 1 ends for Ultimates 2, is that someone on the team has leaked information that Bruce Banner is the Hulk, and the first mission that the Ultimates succeeded at was actually them just cleaning up their own mess, not actually saving people.
Actually, this is how the issue ends, with Bruce Banner saying, "Oh fuck."
I kind of love that.
And spitting a sandwich out.
All right, issue 2.
I love Captain Britain. I love that they put Captain Britain in here. I don't even care that they diluted him by making Captain Italy and Captain France and all the other captains around him. I love Captain Britain. And the fact that they jammed him into the storyline, I was like, yay! I mean, this issue 2 is when Wanda and Pietro come back in, and this is where I made my comment that they're incredible. Even though they're deeply disturbing, but I also love everything about them.
Let's focus on that. So Pietro, the public knows Bruce Banner is the Hulk, so all the Ultimates are being called back to base, be like, we got to figure out what we're doing about this. Pietro and Wanda are they in Venice?
Yeah, Venice.
They're in Venice,
So Pietro is
or the Venetian. They could be in the Venetian in Las Vegas.
I don't think it's the
Venetian. Or
Venetian.
they're in real Venice. We're not sure.
That would be hilarious.
Well, based on Bryan Hitch's ungodly realistic artwork, they're in Venice.
But Pietro is reading a poem to Wanda when he gets the phone call. Yes. And so I Googled the poem, and the poem is called She Walks in Beauty, and it's by someone named Lord Byron. And Lord Byron was known for having an affair with his half-sister. And I did not know that.
This is so next
the
level.
depth,
yes.
the depth to this is so good.
Yeah.
And I was just like...
And even when that conversation ends, he's like, I think we need to go in. And she's like, oh, all right, Pietro, but just for you.
Did Magneto do this to them with all that talk of like the mutant race being the superior race and like pure bloodlines? And is this why they are the way they are? But I went back and I read Ultimate X-Men because they were in that. I'm sure Millar wrote that as well. Their relationship in Ultimate X-Men, definitely much more like a sibling relationship. This is way more.
No, this takes them to a
this is a Lord Byron relationship. Yeah.
Yes. So
it's
even in Ultimates 1, like the issue where they're on the cover, it's just like the way they're standing, they're just like, let's lean really weirdly and hug each other without actually hugging each other.
Well, I also, even later, I think it's the fight with Thor. At some point, Quicksilver makes a comment like, man, I'm at my limit. I can't do this. And someone says like, oh, he like scraped Wanda, and he's like, I'm gonna get him.
Yeah. No, I think she even says like, you need to get him for me. Get him for me.
Get him for me. And he's just like, okay, that's all I needed.
I think she says, he hurt me. He threw Captain Britain into me. She's like, he almost hit my face. And he's like, he almost
what?
Oh,
face?
That's the part that set him off. It's like, he almost ruined my face. And he's just like, I'm going to kill that guy right now. I'm going for it. It was incredible. I don't know if this is the right word, but like nonchalance with which they are in the Ultimates is wonderful. They act like, the Ultimates they're fighting Loki and gods and all, but they act like it's, this annoying dude asked me to do a favor. I got to do it for a second. Like I got to just run over and do this for a day. Is how they act to being on a superhero team. They do.
Well, I know, it's the best. And that's carried over from, at least in Volume 2 or Ultimates 2, you get to see them actually do something. Because like the joke in Ultimates 1 is just like, they're not even there. Half the time they don't even believe they're on the team kind of thing.
And then, so coming out of the Hulk reveal, the suspicion is that Thor, because Thor has since left the Ultimates in protest over their military use. And so the suspicion is that Thor leaked.
He's worried that they will become like a military preemptive strike team. Yeah.
But because of that, because he's voiced displeasure at that and left the team, then Fury and the bureaucratic element kind of point to, okay, well, Thor must have leaked that information. So it leads to like a pretty funny interaction between Cap and Thor at a nightclub, where, of course, horrifying Captain America just goes to start shit. Like he just
Yeah.
takes
So
it
I
upon
think
himself
so.
to
Here's the
start
thing:
shit.
like you can read that. I don't know if that's. I think that's not what he was doing. I think you're meant to feel like it's the same as the giant man scene where he jumps out of a helicopter to go beat the shit out of him.
He kicks a door in. He kicks a door in off its hinges and has like a sociopathic
Because
blank
some
look in his
douchebag
eyes.
bouncer was trying to keep him out.
When Cap
I did
says,
laugh.
"What? I,
The one-
I strike
well-
you as the kind of guy who goes looking for a fight." Like,
Yeah, the answer is obviously
again,
yes.
Yeah, look at his eyes. Look at
Brian
his eyes
Hitch's
when he says that.
artwork, like Cap, he like not looking for a fight. Like he's looking to murder somebody.
Well, one thing, one part that I really laughed at was at one point they kind of like clash, but then calm down. And Thor's like, "Look, I've got an explanation for this. Don't worry." And they're both calm. And Captain America's like, "Oh, okay, sure. What is it?" And then Thor's like, "My evil half brother from Asgard, Loki, is warping reality to turn you against me." And Captain America's just like, "Okay, never mind."
Well, again,
I just
like
thought that was a funny interaction.
Millar did
Yeah.
such a good job with it because Loki, Nick Fury is just kind of a terrible director of Shield because in Ultimates 1 he has his Psi division and he almost gets the entire team killed by the Chitauri because the Chitauri infiltrated the Psi division, and then they're talking about Thor being the leak, and Hawkeye's like, shouldn't our priority being like confirming who the leak was? And Nick Fury's like, pretty sure it was Thor. I don't think we need to do it on this. Like, who else could it be, Hawkeye?
Well,
and the
so-
funny thing is,
so-
like, if Fury had just listened to Hawkeye, you know, maybe
Yeah.
that terrible thing we're going to talk about later that happens to Hawkeye in issue 7 wouldn't have happened. But
Yeah. Also, I mean, well, so part of that is Millar purposefully making it like where maybe it's Nick Fury later, or maybe it's Captain America
Right,
later, or maybe it's this. I mean, so like part of that is like, is that what he really would have said, or is he trying to make like put a little seed of doubt in your mind every time someone talks? There's like a little seed of doubt. You're like, fuck. There's even a point where they're like, shit, is it actually Captain America? You know, like kind of like you actually doubt.
you can always say that it's low-key kind of manipulating things, but just wanted to say that Nick Fury is kind of like a terrible, like he probably shouldn't have this job that he has.
He responds really strongly and emotionally to a lot of things that like you're just the director of, you should be a little bit more reserved and methodical about the way you do business. I feel.
Right.
But
He feels a little
responds very
close to the team.
emotionally to a lot of
Yeah, he's like very emotionally connected to the team.
He just makes a lot of assumptions. To be like the head of like a spy agency, he just makes a lot of... Because I think when Captain America was like, do we have proof it was Thor? Fury says, nothing we can do to prove it right now. And I said, that's a terrible answer. You're a fucking Shield. Figure it out. Like, figure it out.
Yeah, you're the head of
Yeah.
the spy stuff of the U.S. Like you can't just like,
Yeah, and on that
verify
note, I mean, he's
anything.
written better in the MCU. Like it's the same kind of Fury, sort of, but like he's written more like I know what the fuck I'm doing all the time, kind of thing. You know, and you're just like, all right, you know, and that's how you would expect him to be.
And you also find out that Banner and has been doing like therapy with Professor X. Is
I think those are cool. I like those. Also,
I don't
the
know.
brief
I wouldn't
shot
want
of.
Professor X giving me life advice, but all right.
Well,
yeah,
I mean, I just meant in like not life advice per se, but just like allowing him to quote unquote get out of the cell
Right.
and like be somewhere else and like trying to help him cope with like what's going on, kind of thing.
But I feel like isn't that? I mean, I know it's in his mind, but it's still like
You're not even in
escaping
jail anymore.
prison in a metaphysical
yeah.
sense. Like, is
Yeah,
that even legally? Should that be allowed?
Well, I mean, I guess from their point of view is if Banner were to Hulk out in a rage, he probably would be able to eventually break out of that cell. So kind of giving him these tidbits of freedom is keeping the monster in check. I do want to make one big note about Professor X and how creepy he is in the Ultimate Universe. Not when we talked about in the House of X podcast about how he's creepy in the main universe, but I love how when he's
He's
leaving,
always creepy.
I love how when he's leaving, he's talking to Nick Fury and he's like, "Hey, have you given any more thought to the idea of like Bruce just coming and being
on the X-Men?"
And it's like,
You're
oh
like,
yeah,
are you out of your fucking mind?
let's give the most powerful metahuman to ever exist to Professor X to do whatever.
And I like how
fuck he
Fury's
wants.
just like, no, the public wants a scapegoat at this point. Like,
Yeah.
that's not going to happen. And I'm just like, at this point, would you even have considered that? Like, that's such a political answer. Like, sorry, can't do it. Public outcry.
What's your opinion on, so after Fury says they want a scapegoat, Fury's talking to Cyclops and he says, you wouldn't understand what a scapegoat is. He's being sarcastic, right? Because like mutants are the scapegoat for like humans' problems. Like that's why they're being, is he being sarcastic or is Nick Fury, it was just a weird line. Because he basically describes exactly what mutants are going through, and then he goes, "Cyclops, you wouldn't understand." I think he's being.
I'm pleased to say you wouldn't understand.
I read that differently. I read that as
I read that as in,
the
like,
idea that mutants are different than humans.
Yeah,
So
mutants are above human bullshit. Is how I read that.
I think he was criticizing the mutant outlook of like we're better than humans and we don't. So I think he was being like tongue in cheek of like, well, as a superior species, you wouldn't get that.
Yeah.
Is I think what he was saying. Yeah. A couple more points about issue 2 I wanted to make. Back towards the beginning, we get to meet Jarvis again.
I love Jarvis.
He's an interesting character.
I feel like by interesting you mean he's the best character.
I don't know. He's just weird. He is
the Ultimates too.
But going back to how we treat women in this, he refers to Natasha as a slutty minx.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Just apropos of nothing. He's just like, you're a slutty minx.
He's like, you slutty minx.
That's how he talks to people in a public setting.
Yeah.
Jarvis is obviously territorial of Tony. And I laughed when he called Natasha a slut. He was like...
Yeah, but this is a mission control, a professional setting, and he's calling her a slutty minx in front of colleagues.
Yes, but he doesn't give a fuck. Give Tony the one thing that you can't deliver. And he's like, what's that, Hungarian goulash?
While they're doing this back and forth, there's like rows of analysts just at computers type as they're like, you wouldn't know, you slutty minx, and everyone's just like, what are we listening to as we do our job?
By the way, like, just a quick aside of I'm gonna pepper these throughout everything we ever talk about with the Ultimates and Bryan Hitch's art. But that panel or that one full page of the Hulk,
naked Hulk,
fucking beautiful, goddamn beautiful,
he's naked Hulk.
He's like Professor X is like, whatever that makes this easier, young man. I'll be back tomorrow, of course. Same time, same place. You know my psychic distress code of if that monster gives you any trouble in the meantime. He's like, absolutely, Professor. And then it's just like, and you're like, oh, God damn it. That's fucking amazing. Yeah, it just looks, he draws the Hulk so terrifying. And the way he does it where, like, it's like he's cramming the Hulk onto the page. Yeah, for like shoving him into a little box that he doesn't really fit in.
He's cramped.
It's just such a fantastic way of like drawing that character. It's so amazing.
How do you so 0 to 10 Snyder's Zoo scale? How do you feel about this Hulk?
Oh Jesus Christ, 9.7.
He breaks the scale. I'm sorry. I think the Hulk.
No, he's not. He's not as beautifully proportioned as Snyder's is.
Okay,
I mean, there's something monstrous.
We need to refine the scale because I don't even know what the scale is anymore.
9.7. I said 9.7.
No, but I mean, Snyder's Zeus like isn't a. Monstrous.
I guess he's like a bizarro. He's like a bizarro.
Snyder's Zeus is monstrous.
But Snyder's Zeus's proportions are still like humanly proportional, where the Hulk.
Yeah, which is why he's a perfect 10 and the Hulk is a 9.7. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Also, the Hulk is these like wee little beady eyes.
So even though the Hulk is larger than him, he's just not beautifully proportioned. Snyder Zeus.
Yeah. So I wouldn't. I'd rank him kind of low on the Snyder Zeus scale. Actually.
Really? Because of his
the lack of proportion. Yeah. And like the hairline isn't good and the beady eyes. He's not an attractive man.
Well, it's not about attractiveness, Al.
Oh, I thought it was about attractiveness. It's not about attractiveness. He's an interesting case study for the scale because he is super ripped, but he's also monstrously ripped. Whereas Snyder Zeus is,
he's obviously on the scale.
Yeah. But Snyder Zeus is carved from marble. He's just chiseled from stone. The other thing I wanted to mention, Bruce and Hank talking at the end. You know, Bruce also mentions kind of like, they're layering conspiracy of like, even Bruce says like, look at who's coming onto the team now and like who's getting kicked off, like mentioning more military background soldiers being put onto the team. So Bruce is also kind of feeding into the layers of conspiracy and like, well, maybe Thor is right. Maybe they do want to phase the Ultimates and do an actual military branch.
Yeah.
Well, that's Hank that's saying that, yeah.
Hank
says, like, look who they're bringing in, man. Hawkeye, Widow, all those weirdos and psychopaths from the Black Ops units, like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Look who they're phasing out, kind of thing. And then it's just a full page headshot of Nick Fury going like, yes. No, I'm
You just kinda have
listening
to
to what you're
laugh.
saying.
You have to
But that's
laugh
what I
'cause,
mean
like,
is
look
they
what they're
do
phasing
a
out.
good
The guy
job
who almost
of-
killed his wife and the guy who killed 800 civilians. Like, why would they phase us out?
Look who they're phasing out. The psychopaths. They're bringing in all
can't
these
figure it out.
psychopaths.
But I think it's a good way to build the tension of like they're
Oh, no,
going
it's
with the
fantastic,
thread
yeah.
of like, is Thor crazy? But also, well, maybe Hank has a point in that it is
Yeah,
becoming
yeah.
more military. You know, I just like the
They walk
they're
that
playing
tightrope.
those.
Millar like walks that tightrope line the whole time of like tension building and like what's going on and who's right, who's wrong. Is this the right direction for the team? Is it not? You know, it's fantastic. I love it.
Trial of the
issue
Hulk,
3,
Matt Murdock.
Issue 3, Trial of the
Daredevil.
Hulk. I have one note. I have a few notes. The cover of issue 3 is the Hulk kind of strapped up to an electric chair, and the Wasp,
Yes.
Iron Man, Nick Fury, and Captain America are standing behind him. I have never noticed this, but if you zoom in on the ground, it's a bunch of bricks with people's names on it, and I'm assuming it's
people
all
he
the people
killed.
the Hulk killed. I've never noticed that. I
Yes.
just literally just noticed that right now. And then Betty goes to finally visit Bruce, and she has a
Yes.
breakdown in front of him, and she
This
forgets that there's
relationship is
cameras
so
on
toxic.
Bruce. So
Yeah.
so it's a public trial, and I think like they're live streaming Bruce in his cell to like 90
think
Yeah,
so,
there's
seconds.
cameras
yeah.
on it. Yeah, there's cameras on
And-
it. Are they streaming it right then? Maybe not.
I think so, yeah, because he has a because
Bruce says
Betty,
he's
Oh yeah, because he says I'm
uncomfortable
too
admitting
embarrassed in
it,
front
yeah.
of all these people.
yes,
Right? Is that what you're talking about?
And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that is brilliant and perfect karma for that bitch. Yes, he's terrible. She's the worst.
Let me-
and the
let me
entire
read-
world knows it now.
Let me read what
She
Mark
is
Millar
not represented
and
in
Brandon
real life.
or Brian Hitch say about this. Hold on, it's fucking great. Millar says, "I loved writing Bruce and Betty scenes. Their relationship was so poisonous and built entirely on one having power over the other, and yet at the same time, you could tell that they both cared for one another. Likable, but they were hopefully always real. God, I miss these guys. I love them. Why did we leave this book?" But like that, like the comment of them being poisonous for each other is so
It's that's
perfect,
exactly
perfect descriptor. They're horrible people, but for some reason you're just like, I mean, in the span of this conversation that they have, like they're both using like emotional like blackmail on each other like 3 times over.
Constantly, yeah.
It's amazing, like how fast
we-
it goes back and forth.
We talked about it in Ultimates 1, but
He
how
literally says,
in
"You
the-
should be sorry." It's the last thing he says. She has this heartfelt. She's like, "I'm sorry. I should be better. I'm sorry." And he's like, "You should be sorry."
You
like
should
now I have the power again. It's just it's fucking poisonous as shit.
Well,
It's
even
amazing.
going back to Ultimates 1, we talked about it then too,
Yeah.
because originally she had the power over him, and then he turns into the Hulk, and all of a sudden she's kind of like, oh, well, he's kind of a powerful man I'm interested in now. Like you see the dynamic shift going back to Ultimates 1, and but it's never healthy. It's very poisonous. My one note I made about this issue is, and I don't remember thinking this really at the time. So the Ultimates, like Iron Man and Captain America, all the Ultimates are directly and intimately involved with executing Bruce Banner, and it's kind of fucked up. Like Iron Man is setting up the nuclear bomb in the carrier and like confirming that Banner is knocked out. And these are like our heroes who are taking a direct hand in murdering
Yeah,
their ex-teammate.
I mean,
Like,
well,
it's kind of fucked up.
executing. Also, how fucked up is the delivery of the champagne and then he gets knocked out? And then also
Yeah,
you find out that Hank Pym's the one who made that. Also, Nick Fury again. You trusted Hank, of all fucking people, to make who's been buddy with Bruce Banner, and you're literally watching them menacingly from a video camera, like before from issue 2, and you trust Hank to
Also,
do this?
You've
and
already
keep him.
Nick Fury's not good
You've
at his
already-
job. We've been
you've
over this.
already
And you told him he was fired. Yes.
What are you doing?
You wouldn't have fucked up your last thing you wanted to that you would do for this team, would you, Hank? Oh, of course not, Fury. Like, what the fuck? Like,
I'm
I'm
gonna be
hardly going to
honest,
screw up my last assignment. Hank says, like,
Fury
what the
is not
fuck?
good at his job. We've been over this.
Clearly,
I 100% believed it though when Fury came in and was like, "You are off the hook. Your team came
Yeah,
in and
yeah.
told you." I was like, "Oh my god, they did it!" Like, because in regular mainstream universe,
Well,
they
right.
would
That's
throw
how,
it
in a
off.
normal comic, that's
But,
what it
yeah.
would be. Yeah.
I'll drink to that. And he's like, I'm sorry, Bruce. And then it just turns to all red, and he's like, proceed as planned. It's fucking... I love the color shift of just being like blue panel after blue panel after blue panel, and then the last panel of Fury is like, let's go.
Yeah.
We also immediately then, this part is kind of, maybe would have been a little bit more fun to leave it a little bit more of a question mark, but we basically outright just see that Bruce survives, and then
Then Hank let him go, or like,
yeah. I mean, a little bit more mystery there maybe would have been interesting, but
yeah.
it's fine. It's fine.
In this book, in the pacing of this book, they don't have time for that. Like there's no time for like, let's leave this hanging for 7 issues, and then next year we'll bring the Hulk back. It was like, we've got a fucking timeline, and we're racing towards the end of this story, so let's go. So they have this super sad memorial service where like the only people in attendance are basically a few of the Ultimates.
Yeah, the team that just killed him.
Yeah,
is in attendance at the memorial. Yeah,
I mean, man, he killed 800 people.
No, I understand that. I just think it's just it's just fucked up.
Is it weird that they needed them to do
your
it?
Team of heroes, directly murdering one of their own. But
real quick though, the end scene with like Banner being alive, the call to Hank is what I'm talking about. Incoming call, blah blah blah, beep, and he's like, "Thanks, Hank. I just called to say thank you." And then Hank runs to the phone. He's like, "Hello," and then he just like he goes, "Oh my god." Like, did he drug him not enough, or did he not? Like kind of thing. Like,
my interpretation is that he didn't give him as much as like Fury instructed him to.
Yeah.
Yet he still thought it would kill him, and he underestimated. Like, it was kind of like a gamble for Hank. Like, he wasn't sure.
Yeah, he's like, there's a flip of a coin whether he lives through this or not. Maybe that
I don't know.
that
I sort of read it more as just Hank fucked up because he's a loser.
Yeah, I kind of do.
I read
that
it more
could be
as
too. That could be it too. Yeah.
I sort of just strictly read it as like Hank did mean to do what Fury wanted, and he just said, "Oh fuck, I screwed up," because he's a loser.
Or again, as they've done in many Hulk comics over the years, like trying to kill the monster when he's Bruce just never works. Like, there's always this like, fuck you, I don't care how many drugs you put into my system, I'm gonna wake up when you don't want me to. Or, I swallowed a gun and ate a bullet, and then he spit the bullet out, or whatever. Like all those instances of like, I've tried to get rid of myself as Bruce Banner and it never works because Hulk takes over. It could have just been that.
All right, but the next issue, this is something I want to talk about because this is I just love this book. But so issue 4, going from that, the first panel is a single dude, and granted he has a bomb pack, but like a single dude knocked out on the ground, surrounded by Captain America, Black Widow, Iron Man, the Magneto twins, Hawkeye, a helicopter above, like the military overreach.
There's military foot soldiers like on the ground.
I know, but I just mean like the law enforcement overreach. Overkill on handling one thing is really like brings to forefront a lot of what Millar is trying to get at.
100%. Agreed.
So I loved that like panel opening of we leave it at like this somber. They murder the Hulk, but now he's like walking away into a crowd.
So
and the next thing is just overreach.
The next page is commenting on that, though. Like, it's like David Letterman kind of, or pseudo David Letterman, just saying like drug busts, hostage situations, like house fires. Like, what's the point of all this? Are the Ultimates really worth that extra $1 million or $1 billion?
$87 billion. Why do they cost $87 billion?
Oh, dude, that's nothing. Nowadays, that's nothing.
Seriously, that's literally nothing.
Nowadays, that's nothing. We spent like $4 trillion.
Well, I mean,
we spent $4 trillion on COVID.
The point being, like, Janet's point actually makes sense to me. It's like, come on, Dave, we do all that stuff in our spare time. Our main job is still national defense. You ever see a Polaris missile save a kid from a burning building? And I'm like, that's actually a solid fucking point. Like, if your defense budget is going into like a shitload of military stuff, and yes, you're spending money on these people, and yes, does it seem odd that you're spending this much money on these people to just do this random bullshit like this? But her point is like, yeah, but we can do that random bullshit. We can save the small guy as much as save the world. We can also just save a kid from a burning building, and that's what we're here for, kind of thing. And I was like, actually, kind of.
Also, Patrick,
I buy that propaganda. Is what I'm saying.
Let me bring this into perspective for you, Patrick. Meta spent $200 billion on Oculus Rift VR.
What?
Like on the metaverse and VR shit, Meta spent $200 billion on that.
But this is 87 billion a year. Is that right?
Yeah, but that makes sense for if you're telling me 200 billion for a stupid fucking headset or 87 billion for superheroes. That
But
makes
that's
sense,
like
right?
specific to the Ultimate. But so like, are the Ultimates just pulling in crazy salaries? Because you're not like, it's not like outside of Iron Man who can afford to do it himself. Like they all already have their powers. What are you doing that's costing that much money? Unless they're
Well, the
spending money.
cleanup. I mean, they had to
I
clean
guess
up
it must
half
be
of
the
New York
cleanup.
City
Yeah.
from a Hulk attack. That's a lot.
But
Yeah.
they'd have to do that anyways, I guess. Like, just I don't know. Anyways, I thought 87 billion was just like
No, they wouldn't. Patrick, they specifically caused the Hulk attacks, so they
I know,
wouldn't
but
have
like
had to do that anyway.
the Chitauri attack, though, they would have had to do that anyways. You know what I mean? Like they would have had to clean
Well,
up.
I don't know if is the Chitauri attack included in the 87 billion?
I think that's just yearly budget.
The Ultimates cost $87 billion a year, and that's the Ultimates. That's not like all the people
Dude,
that.
but that
No,
makes
no.
sense.
I disagree, Patty. I think that's the whole situation. Like the Triskelion, all the staff, all the people.
Oh,
all
okay.
the things, like everything.
Okay.
That's like
No,
all
it's
the
the
all the
whole
helicarriers.
thing. Yeah,
it's the whole thing. Yeah.
Right. It's
So
not
kind of
just
like all
the
of
five
Shield,
people.
basic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's just the 5 people or 87 billion. Like, fuck,
Yeah,
they
that
all-
would
are
be
they-
insane. You're right. That would be insane.
Are they all making like $15 billion a year doing this?
But it is, if you think, I think the U.S. has spent about $1 trillion on the F-35 jet project from beginning to end. So, like, if you think about it that way, I mean, defense budgets are pretty swollen.
Yeah, it's insane.
They're
This conversation that Cap and Janet have in the gym is like a perfect example of how the relationship is toxic.
I felt so
and
bad
weird.
for her. I felt so bad for her.
it's
like
really fucked up. It's really fucked up.
We only hang out with Steve friends. We do not hang out with Janet's friends. We only hang out with Steve's friends because they're the good, wholesome people from the 1940s. Before
Well, it's
all
not
this-
even that. It's just like, hey, do you want to go? Let's go do this thing with like people our age, and kind of thing. And he's just like, well, we can't push them off. Like Bucky's been looking forward to this, and Gail got her hair done, and blah blah blah, and all this stuff. And then she's like, well, don't you just want to hang out? I mean, they're great and hilarious. She says hilarious, and it's such a perfect word for that situation because she's like, I like hanging out with the old people too, and it's adorable, in that sense. But like, I don't really connect with them. Can we just hang out with some younger, like people our age? And he's like, what are you talking about? They're like a year younger than me or something like that. I was just like, God damn.
prick head type thing to say because he knows what she means.
I know,
He's just-
yeah. Like, what are you talking about,
missing
baby?
But he's just
Bucky
being
and
an
Gail were a
asshole,
year
yeah.
behind me at school. Like, he has to understand where she's coming from. Like,
He does.
are
but
you a
he's just
complete asshole?
Yeah, he is.
I guess
Also,
so.
visually, there's a scene where they're both in it at like a panel, and half of the weights he's lifting are bigger than she is, and it really brings to the forefront of like the power dynamic and how scary he is. And the irony is that
I don't know. I don't
he-
think
he
she's too
saved her
like.
from-
I mean, to Patty's point, like she took out the Hulk. Like, I don't feel like there's a huge power dynamic there. I mean, like, yes, he is Captain America, but like,
I don't know. I feel
think-
like you're a little bit
Yes.
scared for her. And the irony too is he quote unquote saved her from the violent relationship, but it's also what we're presented with as their relationship seems scary for her as well. Like there just seems
Yeah.
to be a lot of like implied violence from him that
and it,
is there at
Yeah.
all times because of what he is. And I find it really scary for her. I don't know if maybe Millar didn't mean it to that
I
extent.
don't think
but
he meant it to be. That's all.
I
I'm trying to
really
say.
am afraid
Is it there?
for her
Sure.
of him.
In the current context of
it's
of
100% there, but
like-
yeah, you're
Yeah.
right, Joe. Like in 2004, I don't think I would have read it that way.
Yeah,
But at
no,
this point in
absolutely not.
Like it came off very clearly because, and going back to Hitch's artwork, it's so realistic. When Captain America says Bucky and Gail were a year behind me at school, like Janet just looks so miserable, and when you
so
take into-
deflated. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you
She
take into
looks-
account, like, yes, she did take down the Hulk, but in the context of being in a relationship with a romantic partner, her only experience is this abusive ex. And now you have this man who, on the surface, is, Prince
the perfect
Charming.
man. Yeah.
But underneath that, it's that toxic 1940s, 1950s masculinity where, you know, the wife is the homemaker and the man is the one who goes out and gets the job done.
I guess all I'm trying to say is, written as it is at the time, I don't think that was the context of what he was trying to get across.
I agree with
I
that.
think he's just trying to go like, oh no, we can't cancel on them. They're my wholesome old friends, you know, kind of thing.
No, but at the same time,
and she's just like, I guess another night of hanging out with old people, and that's all that's really there on the surface. But like when you do look at it through the lens of current day, you go, holy shit, that's not right, you know, kind of thing. It's a balancing act of like how much of this is taken out of context if you read it now, you know, like kind of thing.
Okay, I don't think you're giving Millar enough credit because, like, for example, when she says like, can't we just do something else? He says, well, I already bought tickets and Bucky's been looking forward to it and Gail already bought a dress. That's like typical manipulation from a partner. Yeah. I don't think that's I think Millar definitely meant to display that like Cap is manipulating and dominating her.
I think it's more of like just we always do what I want to do kind of thing, less than manipulation.
Because the juxtaposition.
Well, that is manipulation.
Before that scene is Janet on a talk show, and they're talking about how Captain America was ranked the sexiest man in the world, and you know, chiseled and beautiful, and yada yada yada, and how great he is. And then you flip to the next scene, and it's Janet is clearly just completely miserable. Yeah, it's a different type of control than Hank had over her.
We have Jarvis for a page.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk about Jarvis?
Well, I don't want to talk about Jarvis necessarily, but just the idea that there's
Billionaire Bachelor Club. Yeah.
Yes, there's a Billionaire Bachelor Club, which sounds insane, but there probably is a Billionaire Bachelor Club. There probably is a real one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called the Bohemian.
And they're probably all married, but at the Bachelor Club.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Jarvis is just fucking. He is so bizarre in this.
Yeah, I know. He's good. He's great.
So he's what? He's the assistant butler of Tony Stark, but he's hosting the Billionaire Bachelor Club.
No, he's there to deliver a message from Tony, and he's just getting shit faced while he's there.
Yeah, it's
great.
He is something else, and he also again refers to Natasha as a harlot.
Yeah,
like he's just throwing daggers
because she stole Tony from him, Al. Because he knows what he's doing right now. Because Tony's about to propose, and he's pissed about it.
Like, they probably have never had any type of physical relationship, but Jarvis has been the constant in Tony's life. And Tony makes the point, I think it's in the annual, Tony says that Natasha is the only woman he has ever had a second date with. So for Jarvis, this is like a weird... he doesn't know how to handle it. Yeah, he doesn't like... He's like, what is going on? This is not right.
So who do you think has had more sex, Jarvis and Tony or Bruce and Alfred?
Jarvis and Tony, probably.
Yeah, you think they've had more sex? Probably.
Yeah.
In the Ultimates universe?
in all, just in combined, all universes combined.
Tony and Jarvis, because they have two universes to pull from.
Yeah, I guess so.
He's bizarre. So Tony makes Natasha an Iron Man suit, which I actually like. It's one of those things where you in the comic book world, it's like ridiculous. Why the fuck isn't the whole team just running around in Iron Man suits? Like, I don't understand it. Like, if you have this ability to make these things, like, why is Hawkeye standing next to you in clothes? It doesn't make any sense.
Hawkeye makes that point after they fight Thor because Cap says, like, Iron Man, you were more help than me or Hawkeye here. And Hawkeye's like, well, if everyone had $1 billion super suit to fly around in, we could have done a whole lot more.
But so he gives one to Natasha, which, but again, at least they're addressing it sort of and giving her a suit also. And I was like, that's kind of cool.
But I do think that's somewhat intentional of just commenting on, because Tony's character isn't that, oh, well, what's best for the team or what's best for the world?
No, yeah, it's not. Like, it's not at all. It's just like, this is the chick that I'm dating and
this is the girl I'm bagging, so I'll give her a suit. Like, I think that is more in line with that's who Tony is.
It's fantastic. Yeah, no, I love it. But the point is, he actually made someone else a suit also, just on the surface.
He also made, like 3,000 people stand in a pattern to say, will you marry? Like, he forced Natasha's hometown to stand in a will you marry me pattern.
And he even said, it's such an asshole move. He just, he basically is 3 million of them, sweetie, the entire population of your home city. You wouldn't believe how long it took to organize them like this, or how many labor laws I had to break. Still $100 a head and a warm cup of coffee. And it's amazing how long these guys will stand around in the snow. Like, what the fuck? You're right, it is like Elon Musk with a fucking Iron Man suit.
And then we also, so then we get Thor. Thor makes an appearance breaking up some protest, because protests turned violent.
Yeah, and he stops the
Thor
police.
just shows up, yeah.
They kind of imply that, so you have Captain Britain, Captain Spain, Captain France, Captain
There's a Captain Italy.
There's a bunch of Europeans that are protesting the fact that their governments are creating superhumans. And so they're protesting that, and the police come in and start beating up the protesters, and Thor shows up and electrocutes everyone, saving the protesters. And that's when the Ultimates are like, Thor is out of control. We got to take him down. When they start having a meeting about that.
The shot of the cops, like at first it's like cops with riot gear, and it's just batons and shields. And then the smoke comes out, or the gas grenades come out and start hitting the protesters. And then it just shows a mob of protesters fighting with cops. There's one cop that has a rifle, like he's going to smash someone's skull in. So it's not like it's like, oh, Holt, stay back, guys. And they're just using their shields and stuff. Like, there's a cop about to, like, fucking smash someone's head in, you know, kind of thing. So, like,
so unlike
is
real
Thor
life
flying off the handle? I don't know. I don't think
also, so. Joe, in that panel you're talking about with the police officer with the rifle, if you're in the bottom left-hand corner, that's another Loki.
Yeah, Loki.
Yeah.
I missed all those little references the first, like,
no, he's all over. Yeah, he is all over. Well, the one thing, when I originally read this, the thing that mainly tipped me off that, like, it really was Loki and that Thor was right was that so when they're at the NATO headquarters, Loki visits and he gives this whole backstory of, like, I'm a scientist. We made Thor in a Norwegian lab. Mm-hmm. But he said that, like, Thor's name is like, no, his name is Gunnar. Loki's name is Gunnar. Thor's name is whatever. But he does say that he's his brother, like that they're actual human brothers. And at that point, I don't know. To me, that kind of tipped me off of, like,
that's the tipping of the scale. Yeah, you're like,
I was kind of like, that's a little too on the nose.
That being said, and I've never quite understood why this works, but when they get the belt off of Thor,
wait, we're not there yet.
Does it actually work?
Okay, so I have a theory.
Because Loki is manipulating reality.
No. Here's what I think, because I had that question for.
It's not.
Well, wait. Don't answer
what Al
that.
said.
Don't answer it. Wait till we get to that.
We'll pause it. We'll put a pin in it.
All right, put a pin in that. Put a pin in that. Why does the belt actually take his powers away?
One thing I want to mention before we get to issue 5, the way the fight starts, I thought was fucking awesome. Where, like, it's Thor talking to Jane, and then suddenly he strikes Quicksilver out of nowhere with lightning.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that is so cool.
The first panel of Quicksilver, you don't even see his body. You just see the snow, like, being moved because he's running so fast. Like, the first time that, like, Thor notices it.
The first panel of Quicksilver entering the scene is just snow getting, like, kicked up.
Yeah.
It's just, there's nothing in the panel. It's just trees. And the snow is being disturbed. And you're just like, Jane, I want you to get everyone out of here. Fucking awesome.
But I just think, imagine if this was a movie, it would just be so cool that, like, it's calm and he's just talking to Jane and then suddenly, oh shit, Quicksilver's there. Yeah. And
also,
that's the tip off that they've arrived.
He strikes lightning at Quicksilver like 3 times before he gets him to. And that's what's awesome.
Well,
he's
I
like
wanted to talk
running
about
through the trees
too,
and the lightning's cracking the trees in half and stuff, and it happens like 3 times, and then the last one like nails him.
Well, when we get to the fight, another cool thing is I love how he gets Quicksilver like 3 different times, but he keeps trying. You know, he just keeps trying to get to him, and then he finally does. It was really, I loved Quicksilver in this. But all right, let's
also,
go to
I love how Thor just like looks up into the sky and yells at Fury because he knows Fury's watching from a satellite or a plane or something. And I'm just like, that's fucking awesome.
And again, so the last panel of this issue is, again, Captain America with just emotionless, scary blue eyes. You're going down, buddy, because we're nuts.
Sorry, chum.
Yeah, chum. That old 1940 slang.
But but issue 5 is, so the Ultimates they've been sent down to take down Thor.
So I just want to say, the cover for issue 5 is Thor in the rain, all like battered, and he's holding
holding the
Iron Man's-
shield and the helmet.
Yeah, one of my favorite comic book covers of all time. I love it.
As much as I
insane.
love that one, Patty, Volume 1 of Thor, just like with the arms up over
that one's great.
and like the rain hitting his chest and the lightning, the discs lighting up was like a new thing. That issue of that cover of that comic book might be one of my favorite comic book covers of all time. It's just Thor with like rain beating on his chest and like all the light, the discs lighting up on his chest and the lightning trickling down his chest, and fucking amazing.
Well,
but yeah, that one is up there with them.
No, but I just mean when this was coming out and going back to the idea of the delays between issues, I remember between issues 4 and 5, what I could think of like nothing else.
Yes.
But when issue 5, because issue 4 ended with like, oh fuck, they're gonna fight Thor. And so, the 2 months or whatever, or 3 months it took to get issue 5, I could think of nothing else in this world but, oh my God, they're going to fight Thor in the next issue. It was unreal.
I really enjoy, we talked about this in Ultimates 1, but like, I really enjoy Tony and Thor's friendship. I think it like works really well. I wish they had done that in the MCU. That was like a missed fucking... Tony just being like weirdly enamored with Thor's like ridiculous, like I'm from Asgard mentality, like would have played so well in the MCU. But Iron Man throughout all of this is constantly going like, you're my friend, you're sick in the head. Like I do want to help you, but please don't make me fight you, kind of thing. And I really like everything that Tony, even when he says Thor, for God's sake, like he's not saying like, I don't believe you. He's just saying like, just stop and just come in with us, and we'll try to figure this out. And like, he even says, Thor, will you stop? And he's like, Thor's like, it's Loki, you don't understand, he's manipulating. It's like, God sakes, man. I mean, like, and then the last thing he says is like, you're sick, don't you understand? You're a danger to yourself and to others. Like, just don't do what's about to happen. Like, please. Like, he's like pleading with him, and like, I really just enjoy their friendship on like a weird level of like, he's this rich douchebag in this, and yet he still has this connection to Thor of all fucking people, and he just doesn't want to hurt him. He's like, and not even if he can, he doesn't even know if he can, I guess. But like, it's just, he genuinely does think his friend's sick in the head and needs help. He's like, you're off your meds, buddy. Like, I just want to get you, like, just stop doing what you're doing and come and we'll sort it all out, kind of thing.
Which is honestly like one of the most terrifying like story tropes for me. Anytime there's a situation where someone like Rosemary's Baby, even like when they're like gaslighting into thinking you're crazy, like everyone around you thinks you're crazy and you're not, but then you start like thinking that maybe you are, like that is such a terrifying like trope that's used. So this
and they had set this up so well to be like, is
perfectly.
he crazy? Is he not? We don't know, kind of thing. Yeah. And so like at this point in time, you're just like, I don't know whose side to be on. Like, but I really appreciate Tony's perspective of like, because there are scenes later on when he's like, I'm going to microwave his brain. And you're just like, yeah, but because it's crossed that moment, like for him, he's just like, well, he's a danger now and I got to stop him. Yeah. Like, but he does, he's not like Captain America, let's put it that way. Captain America's like, you're nuts and you're going down.
No,
like,
yeah,
that's
Captain America's very
and Tony's
happy
like,
to just like, oh, I can kill someone.
For fuck's sake, I don't want to fight you. Please don't make me do this. Please don't, like, like, just stop. Just come with us, like kind of thing. And I just wanted to point out how I really like how Tony's relationship with Thor really comes to a head here, but he's still on Thor's side, even though he's like being forced to do something he doesn't want to do, kind of thing.
Well, the first scene of the fight is Thor just engulfed in flames as two people, one of them being Captain America, are flamethrowering him from behind.
Fantastic.
And the other one is Hawkeye without an Iron Man suit.
Yeah, why is Hawkeye there? Why would you send Hawkeye there?
Why
not?
Fly?
Why not? He's part of the team.
Why not? You've got
he's part
Captain
of the team.
America, the Wasp, Captain Britain, Captain Italy, Captain France, Captain
and
Spain.
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man.
He's on the team, right?
Quicksilver.
No, you don't. You don't have Ant-Man. He couldn't have that paper trail.
I love how many times Quicksilver tries and gets struck by lightning. It's just like it happens again.
Yeah, I was bringing it up, but I just love how it takes him like 3 or 4 tries. But I just loved how like he does make it. He succeeds. Like he's just like, all right, I'm going to keep trying.
He's on a gurney being lifted out, and then he's like, wait, and he goes, and it's again struck by lightning.
And he
point
gets it.
where it's
yeah.
like, because I feel like mainstream 616 Quicksilver is kind of a joke. Like he's like a poor man's version of the Flash.
Oh yeah.
So in this
sure.
issue, it's like the most action you've ever seen of the Ultimate Quicksilver in the Ultimates, right? And he just
100%.
keeps- So it takes him 4 attempts. But in the 4th attempt, let's take Thor down. But like he keeps getting hit by lightning. You're like, God damn, man. Like this is so pathetic. You're such a pathetic character. But yeah, love the fact that Pietro played such a big role in this fight.
Yeah.
Wait,
well,
what?
I didn't see it as pathetic. I thought it was kind of like an existentially beautiful effort he put in of like just keep trying and like getting struck by lightning and then
Right.
getting up again to try another time.
I think for me, I didn't
I
expect
thought
it
it
to
was
happen. You know, I thought on the 3rd time he'd get it. So when the third on the 3rd attempt, when he doesn't get on the 3rd attempt, I was like, "Or is just like dunking
He's
on
done.
this guy."
We're
Like,
done. Yeah.
here's my I've a big note that it's gonna probably take me a while to get this out, but the Scarlet Witch, I've always hated the description of her powers, how she affects probability fields. I always hated that. It made no sense. So in this issue, Scarlet Witch says, Thor, there's a reality out there where you're a baby seal about to get clubbed by a million Eskimos. I'm going to find it and bring it here.
Yeah.
And I thought that is such a clever way to kind of give her powers like
Something that makes sense.
explanation that
Yeah.
and if you guys did you guys see Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
There's a
kind
world
of
out
like,
there where you're just a rock and I'm just going to roll you down a hill.
right. And it's kind of like her
Yeah.
ability is that so like in Everything Everywhere All at Once there's a multiverse and you can access other versions of yourself, but like they have to be close to your reality. And it's like basically they're implying that Wanda's power is that she can find a version of you in the universe and not bring that version to our reality, but like whatever effects that version of you is feeling, she can bring that to. So like not like Thor would turn into a baby seal, but all of a sudden he would just be bludgeoned to death. Like
Yeah.
I just thought that was a very interesting way to not like give a hard
And
magic
clearly there's not, 'cause he's a god.
explanation. Right. Well, like not to give a hard magic explanation of how her powers work, because
But again,
possible,
not gritty, but realistic. That's a fantastically realistic version of how her
Yeah,
powers might
it's like-
operate.
It's
Yeah.
like her powers allow her to transverse the multiverse, and she's searching for different realities to pull from. And
Yeah.
when you look at it through that lens as the story progresses, because she has some big other big moments, like in the final battle.
Well, at the final
It
battle,
all kinda
she
makes
she has a
sense, yeah.
similar line to Loki. Yeah.
She's like, there's too many fucking probabilities and realities to pull from. I might fuck it up. And she's doing it, and Thor throws Captain Britain to her, and she gets knocked out. But I just really loved that weird explanation of how Wanda's powers works. And it's why I wish when Secret Wars happened in 2015, they just, not only did they roll Ultimate Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch into 616, but they just straight up replaced their versions. Because the 616 versions of them fucking are the worst.
Yeah, they're
Oh no, mainstream Wanda is the worst. Like
She's the worst.
She's caused
Yeah.
multiple crossover events, and like she's still
multiple.
an Avenger. And it's like you're evil. She is evil. She has invented children. Once you
issue.
cross that line, you can't be an Avenger anymore. Like we
Yeah.
need to discuss something there.
Not only did she invent children, but one of the children she invents is like more powerful than her. Like Wiccan
Which
is
is horrifying.
yeah.
It's fucked up. She invented. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I specified this part of it. She invented children because she's in love with a robot. This is the level of mental balance we're talking about on the most powerful creature alive. Is she falls in love with a robot and makes up children who are more horrifyingly powerful than she is. But she's an Avenger. She's a hero. Hey, she's part of the
Also,
team.
if I understand it correctly, the children she invent are then destroyed, but their souls take over other real kids' bodies
Yep.
and possess them, like
That is
robbing them of their lives.
That is
So,
correct. That is
yeah.
correct.
100%.
all fucked up.
That is correct.
I mean,
Scarlet Witch, everybody.
that's baggage that those individual children have to deal with.
Yeah.
Scarlet Witch. This is Avenger Scarlet Witch. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this version, this Ultimates version, is much better than that.
Oh, she's so
At least
good.
she's in love with her brother. At least she's in love with her brother.
Well, no, she's flirting with a robot later.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
I'm
that was a nice throwaway line where Quicksilver's like, "Were you flirting with that robot?"
yeah.
Oh, another comment about the fight. So, I don't hear the jingle yet, but talking about how women are represented in this, Natasha's also a little bit bonkers on like her contribution to this fight is she gets beat up by Thor and then pretends
And then
to
she
be
fakes
pregnant.
being pregnant. Yeah, yeah.
Pretends to be pregnant to make Thor stop, and then it's just like, oh, psych, I'm not pregnant, and shoots him in the face with like, that's how okay, that just seems
Also,
like a lot.
you really think little bullets are gonna? Why didn't you rip off his belt at that point?
Yeah, so anyway, that's the character development she gets in this fight.
You know what's weird is that scene. Everything that's wrong with that scene, the thing that bothered me most is that when Thor falls for the lie, Natasha turns around and says, "Sucker." Like,
Sucker.
Sucker. Gotcha, sucker.
Like, are you a
He's like,
teenager
Natasha,
from-
I'm so sorry. I don't know. I didn't know you were pregnant. Sucker.
Sucker. Yeah, and just shoots him. Just kind of face shoots him, sucker. But anyway, so back to the fight. One thing, I think we've kind of undersold. Please read this issue. Like, the fight is just awesome.
Yeah,
it's
I
The
really
whole
can't
thing is
speak to
spectacular. But Patrick, you said you had a theory, or I guess maybe not a theory, but you think you know why Thor lost his powers when his belt was removed?
Here's what I think. Because this always confused me. Because what happens at the end of the fight is that supposedly, according to Loki, Thor's power comes from his belt. If you get the belt off of him, then he loses his powers. Quicksilver finally gets the belt off of him. At the same exact moment, Thor loses all his powers and he screams "Father," and he falls out of the sky and hits the ground. But and it never made sense to me. I was like, well, what? This was never explained. But here's what I think, because they go back when he's talking about Volstagg. Volstagg is talking about how Odin gave Thor this mission to protect humanity and be this beacon of hope. Thor is about to kill everybody, I think. Like, Thor is about to destroy all of the Ultimates right before Quicksilver takes the belt off of him. And I think at that moment, Thor became unworthy and Odin took his powers away from him. Like, I think it was just like
that's a good read on it. Yeah.
Because it never made sense to me. And this time, like, I really was like analyzing like what the fuck is happening here. And he says, I came here to save the world, and all you've done is try to crucify me. And then Loki says he's going to kill us. We're too late. He's completely super ionized up there. No one can stop him. And that's when Pietro goes and stops him. And it just implies that
Thor
he's about
says,
to kill
"You're going
everybody.
to die for this, Loki. You hear me, trickster? This charade you've created ends." And right when he says ends, there's like lightning bolts coalescing around him, and like that's when Quicksilver gets the belt off him, basically.
He says ends now, and now is like kind of drawn out as if it's coming from Pietro's point of view,
from his
where it's
perspective,
like,
and it's going slowly. Yeah. I mean, there's the hilarious two panels of Quicksilver saying, Quicksilver to anyone, catch me, kind of thing, because he's falling to the at that point, which is funny. But like, and Captain Britain grabs him, but you're right, it ends with
so I like
Thor
that
saying
read on
"father,"
it,
as in questioning, not only like yelling out to his father, but also saying like, why the fuck has this happened? Like, kind of thing. Like, why did that work? Kind of thing. I get that.
So when I read this back at the time, and then I guess rereading it, I was just prejudiced to thinking like I used to. I mean, when I first read it, I just assumed, okay, Loki's manipulating reality, and he just did that. But I mean, I kind of like your read, Patrick, because he was about to like ionize and just destroy the Ultimates and maybe even all those innocent people that Jane was with that they were hurting. I mean, he was going to do like a nuclear attack. Basically,
they did give them time. Like, Nick Fury did give them time to get the civilians out of there. So Jane and everybody else is gone.
Okay, but I just meant to make the point that Thor was about to just unleash like
I think
magical attack. And
I think the nitpick here is that he says this charade is going to end. But when he says this charade is going to end, what he means is like the fact that my team doesn't believe in me anymore. meaning his team, meaning the Ultimates, meaning
before-
they're gonna end. You know, like kind of like it's
he
not
says-
just. I buy
I mean,
the.
I think he was ready to just kill a bunch of them. And
Yeah.
so, maybe
Yeah.
Odin said, like, never mind, you're not my righteous son anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
You've
cutting
lost
you
your way.
off from the source.
Yeah.
Because
Go ahead,
before
Patty.
that, Thor says, "How dare you lay a hand on me?" He says, "No, no more chances. I tried to explain. I really did. What happens now is nobody's fault but your own, you ingrates." And that's like when he's about to just kill everybody.
To his defense, he did.
Yeah.
Give them many warnings.
Yeah, he did. No, but I do,
did.
Pat. I mean, I like that read on it, Patrick. That it was just like Odin saying, "All right, at that moment, you're not worthy of the power anymore because you're about to use it to murder people in vengeance or whatever."
Yeah.
Right, and the brilliant
take
way
it
this
away.
is written, you can also read that as a crazy person getting a magical belt taken off of him and going "Father," and not knowing and like just being a fucking lunatic. And so it's like you're like, oh goddamn, this.
And then the
when
full
Wanda-
page, the full page thing too of at the end, just Thor just like broken,
destroyed. Yeah.
and powerless there, slumped over is great.
I mean, Hawkeye is like, just give the word, and he gets some instant ventilation cap, and he's like, take it easy, Hawkeye, he's done. And I'm like, so again, I feel like I'm at Cap's defense this entire episode. He's from the 40s, and he's antiquated, and his relationship with Janet is fucked up. But he's not... He is still Captain America a lot.
Yeah.
You know, like he's not just this fucking war machine that brutal, like, and decapitates people. Like, there is parts of him that has humanity, and he just goes, he's done. We're done.
All right, but in a sense, Captain America is very like America. When it comes to brown people in the Middle East, you don't ask a lot of questions. You just kill them. When it comes to blonde, blue-eyed white people, he shows mercy. So it's very American.
Very good point.
It's very American.
I think it's his friend, man. I think it's just like, you don't need to fucking put a
okay.
hole in Thor's head. Like, he's captured. We got him.
Okay, but it's the same point. His friend is a blonde white dude, and his enemies are brown people in the Middle East, and he doesn't give them mercy. What's interesting is, like, Ultimates 1, I don't think has aged well at all. It seems very dated.
Yes,
The characters don't play well nowadays. But this is a real contrast to where it does kind of seem like very modern and timely, even now with some of the themes they're tackling and everything. It's just interesting how different reading this and Ultimates 1 20
current
years
day
later
and age,
is.
like the way we look at mental illness, like the way we look at identity, the way we look at like world politics, like everything is very poignant. I don't know.
And
good job.
the issue we're about to talk about is the kind of like commoditizing and corporatizing of superheroes that we see with Giant Man and his friends in issue 6 is also very modern.
So the
and
one
today
similarity
is
that I wanted to touch on real quick before we move on to the next issue is that, like the Hulk being alive at the end of the trial, similar to that, we get the quick reveal. Like, so the pacing of this book is so breakneck that you don't have time to be like, was he crazy? Who knows? You know, like immediately you get this scene with Thor and Loki's like, I totally fucked you over, bro. And he's like, I won, you know, and he's like, God damn you, Loki. And he's like, security, there's somebody outside my cell. And it's just one guy at a desk, like looking at, I mean, because why don't they have superheroes watching Thor like they would Hulk or somebody like a larger security force? Because it's just a mentally ill man in their minds. So there's just one middle-aged Alfred looking dude behind a desk going like, keep it down, you lunatic, you know, like kind of thing. And one, it's brilliant writing, but two, it's just like, it's kind of speaks to the pace of the story where like they can't even take 2 seconds to be like, was he wrong? We don't know, you know, kind of thing. They're just like, he was wrong, or like Thor was right the whole time. We're already revealing this to you. Moving on. Like, that was
the icing on cake is the last page of this issue is because the whole time Thor was saying the U.S. government is going to use you. They're using you in the Middle East.
Yes.
And Tony's saying like, no, that's not what we do. And the very last page is Nick Fury saying like, Tony, something's come up in the Middle East, like as in implying, no, we are just going to use you as an arm of the military abroad now. And so again, it's just like the icing on the cake of Thor was right.
Right. And I like to pretend it's Loki that has poisoned their minds. But the fact that Tony got, I don't know, mixed up in the military industrial complex and just got shoved into being somehow without realizing he's being manipulated to being a weapon of mass destruction is kind of amazing.
Well, it's revealed in the Ultimates annual. So we're covering issues 1 through 7. The Ultimates annual is what happens, I believe, between issues 6 and 7. But Tony has sold some of his more basic Iron Man designs to the government already.
All right, but let's talk about issue 6. I really loved. I just thought it was hilarious.
It's kind of like a filler issue, but it is.
But it's done so well.
It's such a good break in the action, though. Like leading into like the traitor storyline, and that this is such a weirdly refreshing breath of fresh air because it's just like Hank Pym being stupid for an entire issue.
Yeah,
is just wonderful.
It culminates in him and his defenders trying to enforce the law against some drug dealers or something. I mean, it's just a farce. It goes so wrong, and it's so. I love this issue. He's sunk
so low on the totem pole that he's like, I'm going to like join this team of people, and they all kind of say like, I have powers, I can do this, and then later on you just find out like none of that's real. It's just people they're just cosplayers.
Yeah, and it culminates in Hank as a naked giant having his penis like on the front page of a newspaper, basically.
Well, I did love. So what happens is the defenders, and they're all people that don't have powers. Hank has joined them, and they're going to fight. They're going to go capture kids who are stealing cigarettes. Like that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And Nighthawk, who is like a Batman type character with no powers.
Well, he looks like Owlman from Watchmen. Like, doesn't he look a lot like Watchmen?
For
Owlman,
sure.
sort of.
Yeah. But he's like about to get killed by these kids stealing cigarettes, and Valkyrie, who is just a woman who's got like an orange belt in karate, is like, Hank, you got to do something. And Hank as Ant-Man, it kind of like Millar kind of shows how pathetic the Ant-Man powers are, because Ant-Man's like, there's only about 100 ants here, but if I keep
that was the best. He's like, there's not enough ants. He's like, there's nowhere near.
Also, like, by the way, no offense, but if you're Ant-Man and your powers are ants, like, don't you just like keep a backpack filled with ants?
Maybe.
Like, wouldn't that be part of your thing? And you're just like, I can't depend on the fact that there might be ants everywhere. So like, and this was like this was like a sting operation. Like they knew this was happening. Like put fucking ants, like put a bunch of fucking boxes of ants everywhere.
This goes. This is a good. These three like panels are. I want to talk about both Millar and Hitch of what's going on. So the first panel is the Hawk dude just passed out on a car that he crashed, that he was thrown onto, like almost dead. The next panel is Hank bent over, and I'm quoting, "I'm doing my best. There's just not enough ants. I'm counting maybe 30 or 40. Nowhere near enough." The next panel is these cigarette stealers pouring gasoline over the Hawk dude who's still passed out. And then the final panel below that is Valkyrie just in a thong, bent over, like, for God's
Valkyrie's
sake,
costume
somebody do something. Valkyrie's just in a thong, half naked, because she doesn't have. That's her. Like, they're just
It's also interesting that he can't technically use his giant man powers.
Yeah, because it's owned by the
it's owned by the government. So he's not allowed to turn into giant man to like save the guy.
And then he eventually but he doesn't have a suit, so he's just nakedly turns into a giant. And I mean, and that's what
the incompetence of the defenders, because the defenders hired that photographer to be there for their big drug bust, and the photographer instead takes photos.
Just
of
like writes this expose on them, like, "Hey, these idiots tried to be superheroes. Look at them." But Can we talk about the scene with them with Nick Fury and Hank in the Triskelion real quick?
Hank shows
up. He brings Ultron and Vision with it, like a little kind of like wink to Ultron and Vision are here.
And the only nod to Vision versus Ultron is that Vision has like a little tiny diamond drawn on his head.
And in this version, they're just kind of silent, stupid robots that follow him around.
Well, they're not stupid. They're very smart.
Don't do anything.
They're very smart robots.
Do anything.
So Hank's the giant man formula has been like refined, and so there's actual like Marines,
And they're
that have
better than him.
ability,
That's the
and
other
Yeah,
thing
they're
about how
breaking
pathetic
the
he is.
60-foot boundary. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're better
And Hank-
giant men than he is. That's how pathetic he is.
So Hank walks by them like repairing like a train or something like that, and Hank says, "If there was an ounce of justice, that would be me up there." And it's like, dude, what are you fucking talking about? Like, you're a bad guy. Like, you almost killed your wife. Like, what are you talking about? If
Yeah.
there's any justice, that would be like, why do you think you deserve this? You insane.
Going way back to our
lunatic.
Ultimates 1 fucking episode, man, the dead eyes he has when he's like, "You made me look small, Jan. You made me look small." You're like, "Holy fuck, dude!" And you think, here's a credit to the brilliant writing of Millar. Like, one tiny piece of me did kind of feel like I feel bad for Hank, and I'm like, God damn it! How dare you make me feel bad for Hank?
But that's a good point. Like, I couldn't figure out what Millar was trying to make the reader feel for Hank, because it was like,
I don't know.
It was like it started off.
He
as a
wasn't trying to
redemption
redeem
arc,
him.
but
He's been
then-
making him ridiculous the entire
he's
time.
just making him. I think he's just making him be an object of pity. I mean, he's so clearly just
Pity.
pathetic
Yeah.
in this. Yeah.
Also,
And
toxic
so
Captain
Valkyrie-
America is very clear in this scene. Walk away, Pym. Excuse me? Walk away or I put your head through a wall.
Yeah, he's very.
You really need to humiliate him, Steve? For God's sakes, Jan. Like, kind of like, holy shit, man. Like,
Also, Hank
Yeah.
being a creep, like he strokes Janet's face. Like
I know,
when
he's
they
like
meet
pulling on her
again.
hair. Your hair looks nice.
Your hair looks
And-
fantastic, Jen.
What
Yeah.
the fuck, man? Oh, that's the part.
And then-
By the way, this is the scene where Petro's like, "Wanda, were you just flirting with that machine?"
Yeah.
And there's no response. She's just smiling and like flirtatiously
at
holding her
Vision,
ear or
smiling,
something. Yeah, They're just like, what the fuck's going on there?
Another Hank is pathetic note. So
Yeah.
Valkyrie, the orange belt we mentioned, who's I think 19,
She's
he of course
19.
sleeps with
Yeah.
her. He uses his celebrity to sleep with a 19-year-old. Yeah.
And his
Oh my
internal
God, so
monologue,
fucked up.
he justifies it. He's like, she's using me just as much as I'm using her. It's like, okay, dude.
Yeah, sure.
Sure,
And then
she
look at that last
I mean, she
panel.
is probably, but
he
also-
shrinks down after the act.
Yeah, that
he
was
shrinks
that was
down.
great. And he says something about like, nobody else will touch me after I did it to Janet. Is it really too much to expect the superheroes to save me like they're saving everybody else out there? Yes,
Oh
Hank, it
my
is. It is too
goodness
much to expect.
gracious.
He's
Shut the
such a
fuck up.
loser. He's such a loser. But
So
that's what I
after-
mean.
after the
I
whole
still
farce-
loved this issue, though.
Oh, no,
even
it's
though it's
fantastic.
based on Hank, who's a horrible person, it was so well done. And also the Defenders
But
themselves.
Hank's such a hateable person in this and so horrible that like I love having an issue where it highlights how horrible he is. Like that was like I'm like, yes, I want to see this dickhead reach rock bottom. Like that's fantastic to me. You know what I mean? Like as a reader.
Insight.
And going back to the forward-looking nature of this, I feel like the way the Defenders are set up feels like it also comments on kind of the influencer, social media kind of,
Oh yeah.
aesthetics before substance, and just kind of like labeling yourself as a thing and trying to live
Yeah.
that life publicly, even though, none of the Defenders had powers, but they were just like, well, if we look like superheroes
Right.
and film ourselves doing superhero-like things,
If we
That's
film
all you
ourselves
need to
stopping
be
a
a
bunch of
superhero.
kids from stealing
Yeah.
cigarettes, maybe it'll work.
no,
There's
right.
even a
And
point
then
where like
Yeah.
Valkyrie's like, what's the difference between us and Spider-Man? And at least Hank at that point's like, I think you have to be doing something heroic to be considered a superhero.
That's the saddest part. I mean, oh man, it's the Defenders are so sad that they're looking up. They see as getting Hank Pym on their team as like a get. They're like, oh,
yeah,
we got
basically.
Hank Pym.
That's how sad
kind
it
of thing.
is. Yeah.
But it's also
Yeah.
on the other end of the spectrum sad that he's like, these sad people are making me feel like a hero again.
Yeah.
And then the final note of what a piece of shit Hank is, he knows he's been talking to the traitor
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
knows they're betraying everybody. And he's the worst. Hank is the
Also,
worst.
I analyzed, so the last few panels of this issue is Hank talking to the trader, and all you see of the trader is their hand, and they've got a glove on and a jacket. So all you can see is the skin in between where the glove ends and the jacket begins, and like trying to figure out who that might be. And it's like, is it a woman's hand? Is it a man's hand? Like, the skin's kind of drawn darker. Could it be Nick Fury that he's talking
Yeah,
to?
yeah.
And like, it's just like,
Oh, that's very purposely done. It's like the wrist is
Yeah.
drawn in such a way, and there's a jacket that's heavy on it, so you can't see the rest of the forearm, so you don't know if it's a female's wrist or a man's wrist, and like the shading, it's in shadow, so it's like, are they white? Is it Nick? Is it a black man? Is it a white person? Like, you know, like the skin tone is vague because it's in shadow, and you're like, I mean, it doesn't look like it could be Nick Fury's wrist, but I guess it could be. You know, like kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
you're like, oh, is it a man? Is it Captain America? Is it Black Widow? Like like they did it. They did that well. Looking back and you know who it is, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But if you didn't know at the time, you're like, fuck, it could be anybody. God damn it. You know, like, you sons of bitches, you did this on purpose.
right.
I just love some of the lines. So Hank, it's just hard to believe you're the one that's been creating all these problems for everybody. I mean,
Is
it
it
all
hard
makes
to
sense
believe?
in a funny kind of way. Like, he's
Yeah, the
such a
funny kind
piece
of way is
shit.
because she's a Russian spy.
Yeah, you're talking
what
about
makes
a
it
traitor
funny.
who's like
Classic
caused
spy.
deaths.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
he's talking about a
not
traitor
yet.
who's
Not
caused-
yet, though.
Well,
In
okay,
Hank's
but
defense, all that, by the way, audience, spoiler alert, the traitor is Black Widow. But all she had done at this point was leak the Bruce Banner as Hulk thing. She had not
Yeah.
done what
Yeah.
she's about to do in issue 7, which, if y'all don't know, is on issue 6. I'd love to go to this last issue, because this issue fucked me up. Not as bad as the issue when Hank beats the crap out of Janet, but like,
I don't know.
almost
This one hits me
to-
pretty hard.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad.
I
and I guess in
have children,
Hank's-
and being the father of children and
Yeah.
watching children get murdered, let alone my wife getting murdered at the front door, like, that's some fucked up shit, man. Like, and yes, beating the shit out of your significant other, like Hank did in Volume or in Ultimates 1, like, yeah, that's some fucked up shit. But watching your family get murdered is horrifying to me.
I honestly,
like
I
it
didn't
hits a little
remember-
deeper.
I didn't remember that happened. Like, I think in the I mean, I remember Hawkeye getting attacked, but like, I didn't remember that.
No.
Oh, they
my
straight up murdered his whole
God.
family. I didn't remember that. Yeah.
His, like, it's so the issue starts off with showing that there was a big strike by the Ultimates. What country is it?
It just says
There's-
Middle East nuclear facility.
Yeah,
that's all.
So,
it says.
so the Ultimates have kind of crossed a pretty big line at this point, and we've got some bits with Janet, like not hooking up with Hank, but they have lunch together, and it's all very
Real quick, I love because this continues later in the next part that we'll do in the next episode. But like this bit with Quicksilver taking Captain America out from basically Quicksilver pulls Captain America out from a dangerous situation, so to speak, and they run a certain distance, and he's like, "What are you doing? You're supposed to get me 4 miles from the compound." He's like, "I can't take you any further, General." This guy must weigh 350 pounds or something like that. And it's just like this, the way they're so dismissive of Quicksilver.
yeah.
It's so funny. Like, it's so subtle. He's just like, and from Captain America's perspective, he's just like, why the fuck aren't you doing your job? Like, you're supposed to get me to this point. And Quicksilver's like, Jesus Christ, man, you're like a tank. Like, I'm carrying a tank. Like, what the fuck off? You know, like, I'm trying to run at super speed. And just that. So, like, again, there's a moment later on, and we'll get to that next episode, I guess. But, like,
Well, I
I
like
love
how
that
the,
little tidbit of,
I don't know why I find this adorable, but the giant men are like a group. They're just the giant men are coming. And It's
Yeah.
just 5 giant men who are always together. I just find
one
it
of them
kind
is literally
adorable.
grabbing the tail of a plane, like, just like,
Yeah, but I just like the idea of like they don't have
plane from
names.
taking off.
Yeah, they're just 5 buds. They're just 5 giant men. They're all there,
And there's 6 of them. And they're friends.
or however many. But I find it adorable that they're just a gang of giant men.
From what I find adorable is that Captain Italy thinks he can be anywhere as good as Captain Britain. You know, sort of
Aren't they just the
ridiculous.
same?
You know, like the idea of like an
same
Italian
thing.
captain being as good as British captain. Just,
Aren't they the same? They have the same formula, probably.
I mean,
Aren't they the same
I just find it laughable.
Last I recall, Italy beat Britain in an athletic competition in the Euro Cup finals
that's
of
not even
2021.
true. That can't even possibly be true.
So if that's any indication, But yeah, so Tony visits Thor.
I just love how blunt Thor is. Tony says, "And when did I become one of the bad guys?" And Thor says, "Around the same time you took part in that preemptive strike against a third world country."
He's like, a third world country with nuclear weapons. And he's like, yeah, and what's America?
It's just so interesting how predictive and prescient, is that the right word? This conversation was, because Thor says, "They got you, haven't they? All they had to do was say nuclear weapons and Tony Stark just falls in line like the rest of them." And I feel like that's very much kind of where our country has gone.
Yeah. Can I make a
I mean, like Al said earlier, this is very obviously taking from the current political climate at the time of like weapons of mass destruction that weren't really there, kind of thing, like that, like that kind of they have weapons, we should invade, like kind of like that whole mentality of America at the time, like was just off.
Yeah, I mean the idea of like a preemptive strike and kind of world policing was 2003, 4, 5. I mean that was a big.
Oh yeah,
that was like the
huge.
Big political international policy debate. Is like, is this right to do? I mean that was.
They even make a note in the Ultimates annual, and this goes back to how the Ultimate Universe could kind of have more leeway with time actually passing and like equating what's happening in the comics to current day. Fury's talking to like some Russian guy, and they're saying, "Listen, we gave you some leeway with the Ultimates because of what happened with 9/11, but like don't push it." Because when this comics came out, it was 2004. So it was So it's just kind of interesting
was very
how
strong.
Like it had just happened in their universe as well. So there was a lot of cool stuff they could do with the Ultimate Universe that you just can't do with the main Marvel universe.
Well, I mean, Thor's response when Tony says, like, a third world country with nuclear weapons is, like, as in a justification of why we went after them. And he's like, I think you'll find the only nation that's ever used nuclear weapons against other human beings is the one that you're pledging an oath of allegiance to. And I was like, it's a solid fucking point. And granted, that was 80 years ago, kind of thing. But, like, it's just, that's the kind of thing that, like, is at play here. That it's very heavy in the text. It's also weirdly still resonant.
Yeah. And a quick practical note I wanted to make. So the Triskelion is an island in the middle of the Hudson River. And there's how many hundreds of protesters somehow on there? And with a poster, a giant vertical poster hung on like the main tube. How are the protesters achieving all this?
I mean, Thor kind of sums it up fast with, the tighter you squeeze, the more they'll slip through your fingers. Look at what like a few of my guys did when they got in the building or something.
Yeah,
like
he
that.
kind of
like as in like your security's so tight, and yet like I got 6 guys in the room and they unfurled a banner on.
But how'd they make it onto the island? Is there a ferry to the Triskelion Island? How'd they even make it on there?
Yeah, they sell tickets like the fucking Statue of Liberty.
Maybe.
Oh no.
I wouldn't put it beyond America to also turn it into a tourist attraction just to make money off of it. Yeah. Yeah. And then Patrick, you mentioned, right. The next scene is
Jan has gone back to Hank.
And Hank.
It's so sad. I feel so bad for her.
I do too. It's kind of sad. I mean, as sad as the whole last issue was just an illustration of how sad Hank is as a human being and how low he's sunk. And then you have Janet like having a tryst, I guess, with him. Like like whatever you want to call it. It's just like she's clearly backsliding and going like, Captain America's not right for me, and maybe I should go back to my abusive fucking piece of shit husband. And you're just like, God damn it, Janet. It's not even like I feel bad for Captain America at that point. I'm just like, because I don't. It's really just like I feel bad for Janet because it's just
she's in a tough spot.
Victim mentality of like being like abused and it's horrible.
Plus her current relationship, as we've seen, she's had issues in her current relationship. I guess she's just falling back into like a familiar.
Well, and that's what's
also he's dangerous.
Who's that?
Well, yeah, Captain
They
America.
both
is
are
dangerous.
dangerous, technically. I
They
guess.
are both horrible.
Well, it's
men.
very risque, seeing Hank. He's not even
Woman's just
supposed to be
like-
associated with the team.
And they also. Oh, whoa! Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Wait. Let me put. Do you guys hear? Does this pass the Bechdel test?
It does
the
not.
Bechdel
Oh, is that the
test. The
song?
Bechdel test. Does this pass the Bechdel test? The answer,
The answer is
probably
probably
no.
no.
This fails as badly as anything could fail. The Bechdel test.
Probably worse. This is the worst.
I-
This is the worst fail of all time.
It's bad. I mean,
Bad.
as much as we talked about how well
not only
this
do
aged,
not,
yeah.
not only do no single or no woman talk to another woman in any capacity,
but they are also all.
but all of the
represented
women are
as-
so damaged that
They-
it's just.
yeah.
Oh my god! It's almost yeah.
I mean,
None of
she,
them-
The worst and negative result of the Bechdel test you could possibly have. I think.
and even like I've been gushing over Scarlet Witch and Pietro, but like she does a lot more. When we're going to cover the second part of this, but in these first 7 issues, Wanda doesn't do a whole lot. She usually just
No.
riles up Pietro to do stuff
Yeah.
for her. So yeah, like Millar's handling of
One
the
might say
female
Wanda's
characters is
sort of a
just-
sexy lamp.
most of the women in this are sexy lamps that sometimes get beat up.
I think to be a sexy lamp, you literally cannot have any dialogue. Like
Oh,
I think
well,
you
they do
literally
dialogue.
have to be able to replace them with a lamp, and it's still
Yeah.
the story still stays the same.
Yeah.
But that is one. I know we've talked about how well this has aged, like in a lot of other avenues, but unfortunately, the female representation is not very good or modern.
So here's the thing, though. I don't think this is a dishonest portrayal of a certain person. I just don't think there's enough. There's not a single healthy human female character in
That's
this
what I'm.
book.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
It's
none
not, it's
of
not
the
that this
female
isn't a
characters are-
perfect
yeah.
portrayal of like a woman in this scenario that might
Yeah.
react this way, because it really is.
Yeah, but we don't
Which is
have any
horribly
example
sad.
of another. Yeah,
Yes.
but we don't get any woman who is.
Yes,
a
but there's
positive.
no strong
There's
there's no flip side of that coin. Like that's just all you see. I mean, Betty Ross. What do we really have? We have Betty Ross, Janet Van Dyne, and Natasha.
Wanda.
That's all we got.
And
Wanda.
Natasha.
Yeah.
And Hawkeye's wife for half a scene where
Hawkeye's
she dies.
wife doesn't count. She's a.
Well, I just
she's
mean
not even a
she's in
character.
a scene where she dies. That's it.
So
Well,
yeah,
that's
the-
a refrigerator. That's a refrigerator girlfriend if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Hawkeye for a second.
Yeah.
In real life, if this were a film in real life, what kind of haircut does he have?
I have no idea.
Dude.
Charlie Brown swirl.
Because it looks like thin. It looks like a thin, not a thick, but like spread out thin porcupine.
I mean,
spines.
for how talented of an artist that Bryan Hitch is, like, it is such a weird choice.
It's not a buzz cut. Like it's not a buzz cut because they have
No.
length, but they're like
It looks
little
like it's meant
spines.
to be a buzz cut,
But the hairs themselves are like 3 inches.
but he draws
long.
every individual hair and just
Yeah,
doesn't
they're-
do nearly enough as he should.
Yeah, they're like thin 4-inch long spikes on his head.
I mean, I don't know about 4-inch long, but sure.
They're pretty long.
There,
you're right,
look
they're
at
pretty
that.
long.
Yeah, look at
Like,
this.
why not just have him have a shaved head? It would have been so much
Look at
less
that
work
one.
for you.
I
It's
think that's
so
what he's trying to
weird.
do. I think he's trying to do a shaved head, but he's just not drawing it small and thin enough. Like it's like drawing like a 5 o'clock shadow and just doing like 5 dots where he should do 500 dots. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the difference.
Yeah, but
I'm
I just
looking
wanted
at
to
the same
comment.
panel.
bad.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I don't know what that.
Yeah, his
would look
haircut's
like
out of
on a
control
real-
bad. I don't know what the fuck is it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a buzz cut. That's obviously what he's trying to accomplish. It's very bad.
But it doesn't
it's-
at all look.
It's the one thing about his art that I'm just like, what?
So it's so fucked up. So the last scene of this issue is Hawkeye had just hosted a dinner for the Ultimate. So this is kind of like a parallel to Identity Crisis, where
Yeah.
Sue was about to have a party with a bunch of superheroes and it gets murdered. It gets reversed. Like the party has ended, all the superheroes have left, they get a doorbell ring, and Hawkeye's wife thinks it's Wanda that forgot her purse coming back to get it, and she opens the door, gets her brains blown out, and it's a team of mercenaries that invades Hawkeye's home. And they talk about his kids. They're like
his family.
He's like, there's 2 kids upstairs, and then the other. I told you guys in the text thread, I will never, ever, ever, ever forget that Ultimate Hawkeye's son's name is Column, because Column comes to Hawkeye, and Hawkeye's like, go next door, call the number. And you think the little boy's going to make it alive, and they blow out the kid's brains from behind Hawkeye to the point where...
as he's holding him. Yeah.
As he's holding his son's brains go all over Hawkeye's face. And Hawkeye screams, Column! And it's just like, what the fuck?
The way his wife is killed is, so there's a panel, you see a dot in her head. A panel of you see her from behind, her head shot back, and the rest is just kind of a zoomed in, lifeless eyes on the ground and a puddle of blood. Like, it's intense. It is an intense.
But at that point,
scene.
still, you think, okay, Hawkeye is going to eradicate these guys and save his kids, and that just does not happen.
Hawkeye also gets shot. He gets shot at least 3 times as well. Like, it's.
They grab his kid and they say, and he's like, motherfucker, and they blow him away, which you later find out is like tranquilizer darts or whatever the fuck. But what you think is like bullet holes in his body, and he's like, you shouldn't have dropped me in the fucking kitchen, and he like kills them all. Yeah. And then the little kid runs back up to him. Meanwhile, there's other dudes running upstairs to kill his other 2 kids, which is also horrifying because that was already said.
Yeah, he says 2 kids upstairs, go.
Yeah, go. That's it. Go, 2 kids upstairs, go. Like, holy shit, those kids are fucking dead. Like, why? So you're just like, in your brain, you're like, all right, he killed all the guys in the kitchen. He's talking to his son. Get out of here. And then that kid's brains get blown out all over his face. And you're just like, Jesus fucking Christ. They do a thing in Ultimates 3 where Hawkeye is like, dark, and he has a mask over his face, and he has a target on his head, and blah blah blah. And it's like this really, like, it's a horrible fucking follow up to this book because this book is so good. But at the time I was like, ugh. So he's on this dark path because his family was murdered, and then you watch this scene again, and you're like, never mind.
You're like, all right, I kind of
never mind. I'm back in. It's horrifying. Anybody would be fucked up from this. What the fuck?
And another thing they copied or sort of emulated in the MCU is because Hawkeye's family gets blimped away, he then becomes like gritty Ronin.
And that was the closest thing. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't
which is a good correlation, honestly, and they did it well for the mass audiences with the MCU. I thought it was a good version of that, so to speak. But man, this is dark as fuck. Like, no one would come back from this.
My final point is we'll see this more in the second part of this, but like, I think we kind of made this point in the first Ultimates that Hawkeye is kind of superhuman. Like, he
definitely.
He lands in the kitchen, and what he does to these men by throwing just normal silverware at them.
A human couldn't do that.
And if you look at it, like, there's spoons and stuff sticking out of these people's chests. Like, the knives, even, it's like the blunt end of the knives have gone.
Well, one is like a butcher knife, and you're like, okay, he got that guy. And then he's holding a bunch of spoons and like butter knives, and you're like, what is he gonna do? And then there's spoons like sticking out of people's eyes, and you're like, oh shit.
We'll get to it later, but this is a man who is able to detach his own fingernails and use those to murder people.
Well, that's the point. Like, so they're setting that up here, though. They're like, he can kill a man with a fucking spoon. Is the point, So like, you give him nothing and he'll find something and he'll kill you with it, which is fucking amazing. Also, this scene is horrifying, but also not amazing.
I think we all 3 probably recommend The Ultimates 2, issues 7.
Issue 7 came out in July 20th of 2005. Issue 8 did not come out until September 21st of 2005. So,
that makes sense.
Oh man, the last 7 issues just really drag as far as their release dates. But recommendations. I recommend it.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure we all 3 recommend it. It sounds like we all still enjoyed it.
100%. Yeah. This is
the
a
one-
pass.
Yeah.
It's a 3 out of 3. Ultimates 2, fucking good read. We've
With the
obviously
one-
talked it to death. We love
I mean,
this
the
book.
one kind of asterisk is like, Millar, you're a little bit of a toxic piece of shit with how you write women.
Yeah.
So that's like one asterisk, is like you could do better with the female characters in your books.
So again, I don't think they're not written well. There's
No,
just
but I
no
mean in the
strong females.
Right,
in this
there's
book.
no
But it's
strong.
also, he's got Natasha, who's called a slutty minx. And
They're
a
all
harlot
sort
all
of
the
poisonous,
time,
though. Like,
and
I mean,
they're
even
all-
Captain America, we've been talking about it the whole time. Like, even Captain America's like,
Yeah,
you
he's
kind of
awful.
piece of
He is
shit,
awful.
you know, kind of thing. Like,
He's awful.
man,
Recommended. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye, people of the world.
Next time. Good journey.
goodbye.
Goodbye.
I love the good journey ending all the time.